And welcome everyone to our next session of Department Chair Academy. We have a full agenda for this afternoon's learning. We will be together through 4:30 today. And as always, we have a 15-minute break scheduled. So you can prepare to take a little breather, step away from the screen at 3:15. So between now and your break, we are going to be covering 3 topics. And our first topic, we've got 45 minutes to talk about time management. So I have invited in a close friend of mine who I will introduce in just a moment, but I'm going to finish talking through what else is on our agenda. Next, we'll have with us someone from one of our SUNY community colleges, SUNY Orange, talking about engaging part-time and contingent faculty. So he will talk about what he has learned in his roles in leadership. He's actually he got quite a lot of leadership experience, and also approaching this from his work at the academic teaching and learning center at his community college. So has worked to support a lot of adjuncts. And then we have a great team from SUNY System who are going to be talking about hiring practices. And if you are in a position to be able to welcome in new faculty to your program or department, how you can approach that with the goal of having a diverse pool of faculty, welcoming any possible candidate that would come through, I was going to say the door, but a lot of times our interviews are on Zoom. Talking about this from enhancing diversity and welcoming all candidates. So that will take us through our break time, and then don't leave us after the break because you'll want to come back. This session is all about managing time, people, and money. So the money segment is last, and we're going to learn about managing the department budget. So we have one of our leadership fellows, Dr. Sue Phillips from the University of Albany, coming in to talk about that topic. So without further ado, I am going to introduce to you my colleague and friend, Christy Romer. She is at NYSERNet, and if you have not heard of NYSERNet, they basically provide internet to your college campus and to other systems like libraries, museums, and hospitals. And so we partner, SUNY SAIL partners with them to offer a CIO Leadership Academy for our higher ed IT audiences. So we've been working together for about 8 years now, and Christy does a wonderful job always keeping her trainer and professional development menu of offerings for people, really at the cutting edge of what we need for leaders. And this topic that she's done for our CIO Leadership Academy has been very well received. And with department chairs, I've told her that these department chairs are some of the busiest people on campus because they're not only focused on their own faculty roles and professional development, continuing to stay competitive in that, but also administratively being taxed with more on their schedule. So here she is to shed a little light on what you can do to manage your busy schedule at this time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Let me get my screens all squared away here so I can see all of you and my notes. All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for that introduction, Carolyn. I'm so happy to be here with all of you, and I applaud you for taking the time to, upskill, to make yourself a better leader, to help the folks in your organization be able to grow. Hopefully you'll have a few takeaways from this session to help make sure that you're fitting in all the things that you need to now that you're in this new role. So tips to manage your time effectively as a leader, and hopefully in turn you can make time for strategy in doing that. So I participated in a leadership academy that was quite similar to this one that you're going through. And I just wanted to share some of my takeaways that I gained from that program because they really have lasted with me. It's been about 5 years since I did that program. They've lasted with me this entire time. So my first takeaway was that I didn't think I was a leader until I realized that I was, because I lead from any position within my organization. I never have had direct reports. I don't have anybody that reports to me. I work with cross-departmental teams, of course, but I didn't consider myself a leader because I didn't have the title. And what I took away from that academy is that you don't need to have people reporting you to be a leader. So please make sure that those within your team understand that, because I didn't until I went through that academy and understood that I am a leader. I don't have direct reports, but as soon as I realized that I was already a leader in my own way, that got me out of my way, if you will. So the second takeaway that I had was imposter syndrome is a common experience that many people face, regardless of their position or level of experience. Even high-level executives in my cohort admitted to struggling with imposter syndrome, which was so eye-opening to me. Knowing that others experience the same self-doubt helped me feel less alone. If you've experienced imposter syndrome, please click the thumbs up reaction. Let everybody else know they're not alone. I really think that at some point in our journey, we feel that from time to time. And then lastly, the third takeaway is that to grow as a leader, you must consistently, unfortunately, step out of your comfort zone. It's so easy to remain within our comfort zone since it provides us control, security. However, we must be willing to face our fears and vulnerabilities in order to grow. And that's why I'm here today, taking a big step outside my own comfort zone, talking in front of all of you, strangers, and hopes that I can help you be able to transition to have more time in your leadership journey so that you can be a more strategic learner. So let's take a look at some of the things that we can do maybe to free up that time. So it's the biggest challenge, but once you've taken and put some time into your time management, it does fall into place. So let's just begin by discussing the big three time buckets that make up your day. So regardless of our position or role in the organization, each unit of time we have, whether it's a minute, an hour, or a whole day, is typically devoted to activities related to leading, managing, or doing. Being able to distinguish between these three categories enables us to be purposeful in how we allocate our time. And intentionality is truly the key to maximizing your effectiveness and achieving a healthy work-life balance. So what I'd like you to do is recall yesterday. And if you didn't work yesterday, then recall a day last week. Which column did you spend most of your time? Go ahead and use chat and let us know. Were you leading, were you managing, or were you doing yesterday? What bucket were you spending most of your day in yesterday? If I can get the chat up here. There we go. Ooh, lots of doings. It was a Monday, so I can understand that. Great. So managing, lots of doing. That's normal. So to summarize these columns into one sentence each, leaders focus on the more strategic aspects of our role, essentially planning for the future or doing real-time scenario planning. They direct and develop overall organizational goals and align their staff to champion those goals. So I know somebody put meetings as maybe a managing piece. Definitely, it could also be a leading piece, depending upon what you're doing in those meetings. Managers implement the strategies and actions needed to achieve the goals. So while the leaders are setting the goals, managers implement the strategies and actions to achieve them. Managers take the goals and convert pivot initiatives to coordinate project priorities that will deliver the desired results. Then we have the doers who are getting those tasks done to get to the desired results. executing the to-do list, solving problems, getting stuff done and achieving targets by analyzing and focusing on specific task outcomes. These are the three different buckets that now in your role, you're going to have to manage. And in many cases, you'll be demanded to be a leader and managing and doing a lot of times all at the same time. So learn to dance really is what I'm saying. So all three columns at some point in most of your days is probably going to have some time allocated to it. And yes, it's like dancing, honestly, because you're going to have your feet in two columns simultaneously. There's no way around it sometimes. But to succeed, you must be agile and deliberate in moving from column to column, because sometimes when we get into that doer column, we don't get out. And the reason behind that is because we get immediate gratification in that doer column. How many of you like to check that list off? You don't get to do that a lot of times when you're in the manager and the leader column. So the doer column is a lot of times what got you to the role that you're in because you were so good at the things that you did. So that's why transitioning from doer to manager to leader can be really challenging, and it can be difficult to let go of being that answer person that a doer role might have. And it's hard to not have tangible results at the end of the workday. If you've spent a lot of time managing and leading, like I said, there's may not be that checklist that you can have and look at, that tangible thing that makes you go, okay, yeah, that's what I spent my day doing. Nonetheless, finding the appropriate balance is critical, because if you remain in the doer column, you're never going to progress to the manager and leader columns. So that's one of the things I really want to push out to you all is take the time to really understand what your calendar looks like and where you're spending that time on that calendar in these different buckets. So when you think to last week, so now we did a single day, let's think to an entire week. How much time was spent in each one of the columns? And let me see if I can't get you the link. You can either use the QR code to get into the Mentimeter, or you can go to menti.com and put in that code, or if I can get the chat up here, I can give you the direct link if you just want to use your computer. So if you do that, it will give you the ability to give us a percentage that you did for leading, managing, doing, and we want them all to add up to 100%. So you spent 50% doing, then you need to break up the other percentage, the other 50% between leading and managing. So give it a try. Is it working for everybody? Oh, yep, some people have been able to do it. So let's see. I'm super happy to see here, Carolyn, that they actually do have a percentage on here for leading. A lot of times that number is so very low. So that is great to see that this cohort has a bit of leading in their day or in their week. Just a couple more seconds. All right, so it looks like we've got 6.8 that are doing, 4.5 that are managing, and 2.5 that are leading. And I'm sure that this, changes based on cycles that you have. I know for me that definitely is the case. If I've got workshops or something that's coming up, then that would definitely tweak what this would look like if it were the week before. So totally understand that. But this is just something that I really encourage you to think about after, like on a Friday maybe of every week, and just kind of analyze how much time did I spend in each one of these buckets, because you really want to try to spend a little bit more time in the managing and leading if you can. Leading, of course, is strategy planning, all of that stuff. So that is really important. All right, let's see what we can do maybe to give us some more time to spend managing and leading instead of having so much in the doing. So everybody's situation is different, but some things to consider when looking at your calendar. Take a moment to reflect on the meetings that you've attended in the past few weeks. Were all of them necessary for you to attend? While they may be valuable for others, ask yourself if your attendance is truly needed. Are there meetings that you can scale back on attending or that might be left over from a previous role? So consider how many meetings you were in that you were fully engaged in last week without multitasking. So you had to be in that meeting and you had to be on point the entire time. How many of those meetings would you say you had last week? Share that in chat. So how many meetings you attended that were essential for you to be present and fully engaged? And while you're doing that, I'll give you a little story. So our longtime chief operating officer was promoted to president. And he continued, he ran all the meetings. And as president, he continued to attend most all the meetings. He always did this in his former role, but he tried to just be a participant. It didn't work. His attendance actually created a strange dynamic where everyone looked to him for the answers and direction, as they always did, even though there was someone else put in his place to be leading that meeting. People still looked to him for the answers. So he passed the baton to our project manager to take over the meetings, and realizing that his presence was hindering her ability, he stepped back. He cleansed his calendar from those meetings, and the team actually began to collaborate more effectively. He stayed in the loop because she updated him on their one-on-ones. So something that I see time and time again when someone gets moved into a new leadership position, they also retain many times the calendar that they had from their old position. And it's important that you go through and you cleanse that calendar and you delegate or hand off those meetings that you no longer need to lead or be present on, and then just get updates on. And the other thing to think about is, are there any meetings where your presence is making them be less collaborative because of your new role? Is it causing some hesitation from the team to talk freely? So just something that I have seen, and I just want to plant that seed. I do recall a viral video during the pandemic of a middle school class that was being taught on Zoom. And when the teacher lost her internet connection, despite the chaos that ensued, a few students took charge and successfully managed the situation. So my reason for sharing that little story is trust. Trust your colleagues who now may be your staff, that they can handle it. And if they need you, they'll come to you. So calendar cleanse is a big one to take a look at and see what can be cleaned up. The other thing with your calendar is defensive calendaring. I did not know this was a thing, but it is. It's a legitimate practice that a lot of people started doing during COVID because meetings ramped up so heavily. So basically what this means is setting time on your calendar for uninterrupted focused work. So if you don't, then you're going to find those pop-up meetings in a block that you had mentally planned that you were going to use for focus work, or working on something different than what you really needed to be worked on because you didn't plan out on your calendar to do it. This is a socially acceptable way to protect your time from distractions and interruptions. And someone to follow, Professor Cal Newport, he calls this practice time blocking and emphasizes the need for a method to stay focused in a distracted world. And isn't that the truth? At NiserNet, we actually implemented a no meeting Fridays to help combat Zoom and meeting fatigue. So no scheduled internal meetings on Fridays unless absolutely necessary. It's been great. It's been very well received. And that's where I can get some of my best focus work done. And then last week, I was listening to a podcast featuring a CIO from a large tech company who talked about how they promote and cultivate weekly time for innovation. And they call it Productivity Zone. And it occurs every Thursday afternoon, where rule of thumb is no meeting scheduled, where to provide time for everyone in the organization to have intentional weekly time to focus on innovation. They're a tech company, so innovation is key. I have some resources to share with you all, and I'll give them to Carolyn so that she can follow up with you about Cal Newport. He has a great blog and a podcast that will be super, super helpful in your time blocking endeavors. And then the other thing to think about along with the time blocking is scheduling everything. There's so many things that we do during the day, and we get to the end of the day and we're like, oh my gosh, what did I do today? So if you schedule and put those things on your calendar, that's going to help you minimize time wastage, and it's going to help you understand what did you do that day. It'll also aid in prioritizing tasks and preventing procrastination. Carolyn never does that. By creating a benchmark on task completion time, it forces one to be realistic with their time. I've found that taking a half an hour every Monday morning to review the upcoming week has been really effective for me. So that first block in Monday morning is me evaluating my calendar, me setting up my time blocks, me going through and scheduling things that I know I have to get done that week, and making sure that it's on my calendar to do so. I tried to do this when I first started on Fridays. That just didn't work for me. It was making me anxious all weekend knowing what my list was for the following week. So I moved it to Monday morning, and that helped me immensely. Everybody's different, so do what's best for you. One of the other resources that I highly recommend is Becoming Your Best and Do What Matters Most. They have some books, one that is called Start with Vision, and they're a father-son team that insists that pre-week planning is the key to creating a productive work week. And if you don't understand how to set clear goals, you won't be as effective. So one of the things that they really talk about with goal setting and pre-week planning is working with the SMART when you're building what those are, what those look like. So let's take a look at that. So setting clear and specific goals is essential for effective time management. Many time management issues can be traced back to goals that lack clarity. As a workplace leader, it's important to set goals that are specific. So here's our SMART acronym: specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. Not just for staff, but also yourself. The SMART acronym has been around for a really long time, and most people follow-ish, smartish. So really think about focusing on the measurable goals you are creating in a realistic time frame. It's the measurement and the realistic of the time frame that tend to be the downfalls of this. So for instance, let's say that you have to do some budget projections, and you're going to learn all about the money later today that you have to manage. So let's say that you have budget projections that you've got to get off your desk this week. An unclear goal would be finish budget projections by the end of the week. That's overwhelming, that's daunting. Clear goal would be to chunk it up or break it into smaller measurable pieces. So finish budget projections through June by Wednesday and complete budget projections fully by Friday. So that's chunking it into 2 parts. You may, based on the time, have to chunk it into 4 parts or 6 parts. Whatever it might be, chunk it down so that it's more manageable than having to do the full thing. If you're not going to have time on your calendar to do those kinds of large projects in one setting. So chunk it so that it is into specific, measurable, and achievable chunks, and you'll be more successful. And the other great thing for those of you that like to check things off the list, if it's chunked into smaller pieces, then you've got littler pieces that when you finish, you get to check off. So that's one of my favorite things about chunking out something large. The reality is that a significant portion of your time is spent working. And for those that work from home from time to time, achieving the work-life balance can be a bit of a challenge. And as a leader in higher education, where infrastructure and users and all the things that you are responsible for really never sleep, because do the students really sleep? No. It can be challenging and difficult. You're going to be getting those dings and those calls and emails and everything at who knows what times. So it's really important for you to have this conversation with your team. It will help you, it will help them with this whole life balance, life work balance. So establishing boundaries within your team is critical to achieving it. One simple way is just by having your calendars updated with the work hours. I know here at NYSERNet, we have some flexible hours. There's a core set of time that we need to be available. So that way, if there's all staff meetings or something like that, 9 to 3 p.m., we all need to be available, but we can flex our time any way around that. So knowing what someone's time is for what their workday looks like means their calendars need to be updated, and your calendar has the ability to set what your work hours are. So I encourage you to ask your team to do that if you've got a scenario where you're working with flexible hours. The other thing that I encourage you to sit down and chat with your team about is communication boundaries. Oh, this is all over the place, dependent upon the generations that you may have in your team. We all have our own preferences for how we like to communicate. And most of the time it's what's the easiest for me right now. So I know that when the pandemic hit, we ran into a big issue with this at NYSERNet, because everybody was basically leveraging the way they knew they'd get somebody to respond the quickest. So for one person, we knew that she communicated best via text message. Another person, we knew email would work. Another person, we knew Teams. And then when it came down to trying to find the information you're looking for, you had so many places that you had to look for it. Highly, highly recommend sitting down and talking with the team about what modes of communication we're going to use for what. A lot of the CIOs that are mentors in our academy, I was surprised they actually said that their cell phones stay out of their rooms in the evenings. So, and their team knows it. Their team knows that. So they have other means to get a hold of them if needed, but the cell phone is not something they have readily on their nightstands. So sit down with the team and really talk this through so that when something is needed, some emergency or whatever it might be, they know how best to get a hold of you. In the past, it was kind of an unsaid thing, but now with all the generations and all the different communication means that we have, it's really important to talk it through. I know at home for me, when I was a kid, if the phone call came in from my dad and he was at work, then something was wrong. Like you never got a phone call from dad at work. So definitely talk with folks. And now, my kids, they'll call me any time of the day. So definitely talk with your team and make sure that they understand what the best means for communication with each other and with you is available. The other thing to think about is file sharing. Same scenario. Where is everything for teams? Where is your work stuff? Where is that everybody has to final versions of something? So at NiserNet, we had this major challenge with file sharing, and we had multiple versions scattered across various Dropbox folders. And whenever we had to add a new member to the team, it required hunting down the folder so that the person that owned it could grant access. You probably are experiencing somewhat of a similar scenario with some of the files that you have. So I encourage you to kind of work with your team to think about how are we going to manage files? When they're my own files that only I need access to, here at NiserNet, we put them in Dropbox. You could do OneDrive. When it's something the whole team needs access to, maybe we're collaborating on a document together, then we're going to put it in Teams. We're going to put it in a single location that everybody can get to it. When it's in its final format, we have an intranet site that's a SharePoint site, but it's our own internal intranet. And the final versions go there. So putting that in place has helped with time management greatly. We spent so much time trying to hunt down files, especially if someone left. It was absolutely crazy. We put this in place and it really has made a huge difference. So definitely follow Stephen Covey's suggestions. Sharpen your saw. Take the time. I know you're all like, oh, I'm too busy. I don't have the time to do all this and figure it out. Take the time to sharpen that saw. It will make a big difference. And if your team is less frustrated because they can actually find the files that they need, that is a huge win. And then the other thing that I want to just pass on is take a break. Remember that now you're the leader, so it's essential to allocate time for breaks and convey this to your team. Make sure that those are built into your calendar. Remember, monkey see, monkey do. So you want your team to be mentally and physically able, and taking a break has proven to make a workday much better. And it's a wise decision to put that on your calendar so others can see it, so they know that it's okay. Demonstrating self-care and encouraging others to do the same, it's really crucial. So many of you have likely received recognition and promotions for your ability to execute and deliver results. Kudos. Execution is what proves our worth and value to the organization. However, there comes a point where you must prioritize time for vision and strategy. So prioritize time for managing and leading, and delegate execution to others. So hopefully, in the different things that we've talked about, revisiting the meetings that you attend, scaling back your attendance, scheduling everything so that you can block that time on your calendar, chunk those projects that you have to get done so that you have measurable and manageable goals, and talk to your team about how they want to communicate and share files. just taking some of this time to do some of these things is really going to make a huge difference. And of course, don't forget to take that well-deserved break. How am I doing on time, Carolyn?
You're great. It's 1:35. So at this point, we can let people ask any question they might have, comments, maybe some challenges that they've already encountered if they're starting to do some work on their calendar, preparing for a chair role in the fall, and like, how the heck is this going to happen?
Yeah.
So ask away. What are and we can use each other as sort of, you know, ways we can learn and who's doing this well.
Let's crowdsource. Let's crowdsource solving our problems.
Yeah, well, Christy knows I took the course Getting Things Done recently. So I got a certification in that course, and it really did live up to the hype. So, you know, simple things like where Christy was giving you the feedback about be specific and writing your tasks, that's helped me. And not just letting those things linger in my mind. Like, I know I've got to get back to that, or I put it on a post-it and things in a notebook and everywhere. But now I have one source of writing down my tasks and being specific with the verb, like what it needs to be, not just too vague. Yeah, Jen.
May I ask what your one source of writing down your tasks
Yeah.
is? And does anyone have any recommendations for good task management software or systems? Because I also have like 3 different systems in place depending on what the bucket is, what kind of stuff it is.
Well, so I am a busy working mom, and most of my stress comes from the, do I owe money to the propane company? Like all these random home tasks that just build up. So my one source I use is Google Keep. And I have different categories of lists in there. Like my whole grocery list is in there, my task list. I have a friends category because, you know, I'm a high I, that's important for me. So like who I need to reach out to. But I've got all different categories in Google Keep, and then I can go right in from my app on the phone. If I'm in, like, I went shopping yesterday with the kids, and like I get a couple things off that list, checks it right there. So for me, Google Keep, and then I even use it with my home Google so I can tell it to update things as things pop up. So for me, that's been really helpful.
Yeah, I seen Jacqueline shared her notebook, which is, of course, you know, tried and true method, always has worked. I just have struggled. That's how I always used to do it. But then I had to either remember to bring that notebook with me everywhere.
Yeah.
Because we work in the office sometimes, we're at home most of the time, but that juggling of making sure I had that task list with me wherever I went forced me into going with the electronic means. Anybody else have any tried and true way that you share?
Giordana, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, Christy. Very useful. I was just wondering what your thoughts are, and perhaps also other people, on sharing my cell phone with people in my department. I know from the previous chair that some people were just texting with the stuff that wasn't really an emergency.
Yeah. I'll tell you my personal take, and I don't know what it's like in chair culture, so I want to hear from everybody else. But I don't share my cell phone. What I do is I forward my call to my cell phone, like my office line. If I'm not on Microsoft Teams calls, I forward it to the cell. So they're essentially reaching me in my cell, but they don't know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we have as well. However, there are some folks in my organization that have my direct cell, but we've been clear with when we leverage that. Like you haven't been able to get a hold of me any other way, and it's important. It's that important that you need.
The thing is, everything goes to the cell anyway, because Microsoft Teams app is on the phone if you've got that enabled. So they're still reaching you, but I just feel like it's a level of like knowing that there's a call coming through. I just don't want to be surprised that it's a work related thing if I'm out with my family. So I just mentally, for me, I like to have that separated. Rodina.
Hi, good afternoon. So I do have a question regarding the leader, manager, doer, and I do a lot, and I noticed, based off of the survey that quite a few of us do as well. But I feel like as a chair, and I would love to get your thoughts on it. As a chair, we lead. I don't necessarily have people that report to me from an administrative perspective. So we are doing, like, I have to do the budget, I have to do, the annual report, the annual plan, so how do we balance that out, and how do we minimize some of that doing to move into the manager, or is that like, say, for future roles? Just looking for clarity on that.
I think that every role has a component of the leading, managing, and doing, and that it would be really helpful for you. And I'll be sending my presentation to Carolyn, so you'll have the slide that has the different buckets and so the quadrants, so that you can really kind of analyze your schedule and see, do you end up having most of your weekly time doing, and what can you do to kind of change that? And for me, that was just something I was putting on myself. I was not time blocking for me to be able to do some of the strategic work that my job required. So now that I've time blocked that, okay, this is when you're going to be working on strategy planning, additional workshops for the year, those types of things. Now that I'm putting that time on my calendar, I'm doing it more. I always would have that to-do list, right? The ones that we just talked about keeping, and it would eat at me. So I just thought I had to work on it, work on it, work on it, work on it. And then the week would get away from me, and I never spent the time needed for the strategy portion.
Understand.
So I think every role has a component of each. As you grow in your role into different higher levels, the shift will change for the percentage. But really analyze what you are doing and make sure that you do have some time for that growth, even if it's for your own growth, your own professional growth.
Okay, thank you.
Ashley?
Hello. So in my department, we have a bad pattern of sharing everybody's cell phones as whenever you join a committee or whatever it might be. So every single member of my department has my phone number. I just finished my first year of chairing, and I was checking in with my colleagues, like, do people call you at night? People call me at night. People call me in the mornings. So I guess my question is, how do we backtrack and regain some balance in my classes with my students? For example, I tell them I'm a recovering workaholic and I try not to answer at nights or on weekends, but please forgive me if I do, to try to set that expectation. I'm wondering how we do that with our colleagues.
I think you just do it. You take a step back and you have a meeting to discuss it, and, blame the work-life balance initiatives that, many organizations are trying to have, so that folks don't feel overwhelmed. And you want to keep your retention high. And if they're feeling overwhelmed constantly because there's all this noise, then that's going to be problematic. So I would say take a step back, meet with the team, and kind of discuss what your communication best practices are going to be and come to an agreement. A lot of times we start our cohorts with determining kind of the guidelines, of the rules for the cohort, what's said in Vegas stays in Vegas type of thing. Do the same thing with your team. Let's define what the rules are and have them help build it. Don't just dictate it. Have them help build it. What's going to be fair.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that, Christy. I think all that is wonderful advice, and it's not too late, even if you've already, given out your number, because I think now in a leadership role that gives you a little bit more ability to say, I've been permitting this in my own world, like to have this cell phone privilege of, you can reach me anytime, but recognizing now that if you permit it, you promote it, right? Like you're in a leadership role. And so if you've done that, you're now saying to everybody else that they should, if they want to, sort of be a part of this culture, that this is what you promote.
Yeah, definitely be cognizant of that.
Yeah. So I know we are at time and we have 2 more hands up. So I see our next speaker is ready, and I just want to check in and say hello to him. Hello, Michael. I see you. I've given you co-host privileges. Are you okay if we go a couple more minutes to make sure that our questions are answered?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this is a really good topic, especially as someone says, a recovering workaholic myself. I completely understand this entire conversation, and so many people have my cell phone number from my years of being a chair. So please continue. This is an important topic.
Good. All right. Joachim?
Unfortunately, the first thing in our office is give you a cell phone. So we have everyone's cell phones out there, and especially when the provost is asking, you have to give it. But anyway, going back to the 3 bucket, I think it's a great idea to schedule everything, because usually what's on the schedule is the doing. It's the meetings, it's the things that you actually do, and we don't schedule time for leading or even for managing. So I think that's a great idea to schedule everything, block out time for you to strategize, to think about the future, to plan, and so on. And I think I should do that more. So going back to the question, thanks for sharing the Google Keep, which I've never aware of that. But I'm a to-do list kind of person. So would you suggest, my question is, would you suggest to put everything in the calendar, like Outlook calendar, say, this is what I'm going to do, instead of have a separate to-do list in whatever the apps you have?
It's such a personal question. And
I have multiple to-do lists, multiple notebooks, all that stuff, yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think every week we all refine this for ourselves, honestly. Like, so I think just start something, and every week check in with yourself. Like, that's what I did when I took this Getting Things Done certification. It was a matter of every Monday taking a half hour, literally putting that on my calendar to check in with my system. Are my lists working for me? Like, do I need to change an app and allow time to set that up? But really taking that half hour once a week is important, because then you can breathe, like, and just check in the next week. How did it go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's figuring out what works best for yourself, because some of the things on the to-do list probably or might not be something you want on your Outlook calendar that your colleagues can see, and you don't want to private everything.
Yeah, and every team has different expectations. So the team that I'm on right now, everyone uses Microsoft products. Like, everything is in Teams, OneNote, OneDrive, and we have to write a weekly summary of our tasks. So that's gotten me in the habit of using that. But then I take it and I paste it into what I want to use it in. So, I think these things are always evolving. But thinking about when you get like, let's say you bump into a colleague in the hallway, and out of that comes an action item for you, like right away being able to put it somewhere. Like, how are you going to do that? Like, for me, I can put it in my Google Keep, or I can email it to myself and then later put it in my work system. But just having a plan for in the moment, so that you're not inundated with the noise internally, like things that, I know all these things are easy to do, but it's an interruption.
Mm-hmm.
Did we get to all the questions?
I think I have the last one.
Okay. Go ahead, Doug.
It's kind of like a question for everybody. This whole phone thing is a big deal, I think. Years ago, I used to give my phone to everybody as well, and then I'd get drunk calls at night, and I'd get faculty members doing the. I mean, I can tell you stories you would not believe. But anyway, becoming the chair, what I'm finding is that administration is actually contacting people who are off contract using their personal phones and then trying to pull them in to do extra work. How do you draw a line there? I mean, it's not that we don't want to share our phone number, but I mean, it's, you know, as chair, how do I advocate for these people? How do I try to make it so that it's not, you know, when we set the boundaries, like you talked about earlier, it's not me as chair or faculty trying to get around doing what we need to do, but it's really, we're off contract. So how do you, what are your thoughts on that?
The tough one. I mean, you can talk about the culture you've set on your team, right? Like the thing you can control is the communication playbook that you've all agreed to. Like we've agreed as a team that this is how we operate. So if we need to do something differently, I don't know, maybe that's the conversation. Mario.
No, just a quick question or observation. I think that I will give my phone to my closest team, and you know, like the administrator, assistant chair. That's different as you relate to the colleagues, the rest of the faculty, or other personnel or the adjuncts. I think that I'm trying to establish that in sort of in circles, but the certain people, I agree that I should keep constant communication. I mean, we know each other and we know how to set boundaries. I mean, openly or intuitively. We don't call in the middle of the night on a Saturday for something that can be wait until Monday. But it's good to have also a minimum, because if something come up, we have something like we can, an adjunct instructor who suddenly say he cannot teach a class and we need immediately to add, and it's a Saturday night that he's mail to me. And so I right away communicate with the administrator, the assistant chair, and we set a plan to start recruiting and finding associate. For instance, it's just an example, but I think it's good to have like levels of also of communication, you know, within the team. I don't know if that's a good idea.
No, that's good. This has been a great conversation, you know, feel free to use the Brightspace dialogue discussion board to keep it going. You know, as you have thoughts about this or just want to pose something to the group and get their thoughts. That's why it's there. And this has been wonderful. And I want to thank Christy for the time you put into building this presentation, sharing your experience, and just your openness. So thank you, everyone, for participating so far. And we will say goodbye to Christy until next time.
Great seeing you all. Thank you so much. Good luck.
And so welcome to the Zoom floor. We have Dr. Michael Wolter. And Michael, I want to thank you for taking this request to speak to the SUNY chairs today. This was sort of a last minute request. But I know that he comes highly recommended from his colleagues at SUNY Orange Community College. He's been doing this work in many capacities over the years, and I'm sure he'll share a little bit more about his background. But I'm looking here at your dissertation title, which for a leadership development person like me, it gets me excited. So he studied the relationship between employee motivation and leadership styles for remote call center representatives. And so you've got lots of, you know, MBTI experience and leadership development in your background, which is awesome. And I'm just really happy that you could come here today and get into the conversation, how we can best support our adjuncts and our part-time faculty. So we've got, you know, a nice group of 27 chairs in this academy. They've been spending the summer weeks preparing a lot of times for their first role as chair in the fall coming up. And so this might not be something that they initially think about, but what sort of guidance might you have for us to be able to welcome them into the fold, just like anyone else on the campus?
How to welcome in adjunct faculty when they come into campus?
Yeah.
I mean, with anything, you really want to look at, it's all part of the onboarding process as well too. It doesn't start the minute you hire them. It starts the minute you interview them or connect with them. You know, the email that comes out, and you kind of set the tone and the culture for your team, your organization, the school as a whole, or your department, the college. That's where it kind of sets who you are and what you are, and what, you know, they can expect from coming in. So I think when the minute you respond to that email, or, you know, or the fact that even you do respond, because sometimes when adjuncts reach out, they'll send out emails to chairs saying, hey, I'm looking for work, and never hear back. And, you know, after a while, some of those individuals like, oh, those people never get back. Having that, hey, I'd love to hear from you. This is great. I would love to talk to you. Right now, we don't have openings, but I have you on file. Just having that connection already puts you apart from another school who may not respond because they get 300, you know, responses every day type thing for that. So I think that's a big part of it. And then when they do get hired and you bring them on, you know, it's, you know, just making them feel part of the community. One thing I will talk about a little bit later on as well too, is that when you look at universities and college institutions, majority of the teaching groups are going to be your adjunct faculty. You have your core full-time faculty members, but you have a majority of institutions, majority of what they have is in adjunct faculty or part-time faculty teaching a bulk of their classes. That is, when you look at that, that is their front line to the students, to the community as a whole. So how you onboard your adjunct faculty and bring them into your culture and who you are really speaks volumes to students. So if they're on board and they connect really well, you're going to have positive returns just from your student engagement and student, you know, successes as well. Was that the first question, or do you want me to jump into the rest, or?
Yeah, no, I would in general
Yeah.
welcome anything that you have to offer to the group.
Sure.
And so you've got time on our agenda. I know we've got them nice and warmed up for you. They've got questions. They're eager to talk today. So this is great. Take advantage. And then we can post any resources that you might have for us in our Brightspace environment after today.
Awesome. So the first thing I'll definitely not suggest is being available after 9 o'clock at night when your adjuncts are teaching classes. I mean, that's probably the first thing not to do, and give out your cell phone to everybody. As that example we've talked about previously, that came up in the previous session conversation, you know, it's one of those things of, I think I myself set a very interesting precedent for myself that I've had to work over time as well too, is being a dad and having younger children, especially in the faculty setting. I'm up late when when he was an infant, my 4-year-old, when he was an infant, he was up late. So here I am, he can't sleep, I'm holding a bottle, I'm typing away on something, you know, okay, I'll answer a few emails while he's kind of chilling out. The next thing I know, oh, Mike, you're up. Yeah, of course I'm up. And the next thing you know, you have that interaction. So it's, you know, being mindful of those. I think someone put in the chat that, you know, they answer emails, but they don't schedule it to the next day. That's actually a brilliant idea. And I think I'm going to steal that one. Why didn't I ever think about that part? Before we jump in, I guess a little more background about myself. I've been in my past life, I think in terms of what I've done in higher ed, I started off as an RA. I started off as a hall, you know, I moved on to a hall director, moved on to assistant director of Res Life. So seeing a lot of that interesting stories that have happened in a college campus has really helped me from my crisis management standpoint. So after dealing with 2 o'clock in the morning drunken phone calls, building fires, popcorn catching on fire in microwaves, a lot of the things that happen in day-to-day life, I tend to like, oh, this is easy after, you know, I don't get frazzled as much. And I think having that calmness aspect really helps with faculty, especially adjunct faculty, when, you know, I screwed up on something, I accidentally deleted something in the class. It's okay, we got this. And I think that demeanor sets a lot in terms of the perception you give out. I've been a department chair for 10, I was a department chair for 10 years in a management and leadership program. And the program itself had a on-ground contingent and a fully online contingent as well too. So totally two different demographics of students you would have. You would have your 18 to 22-year-olds on the on-ground, and then your non-traditional students on in the online part. After that, I've also been assistant dean and kind of stepped in role into a temporary dean role when they were searching for the dean role, and a fully online university as well. So having the different structures and different elements and how to communicate and the different levels of communication, I think has been very interesting. And I think every time I've stepped into a new role, I learn a different way of communicating, as well as saying the same thing, but even just saying it differently to help connect with people. Let me share my slides real quick. Do I have permission to share or?
You sure do.
Okay, perfect. Can everyone see everything?
We can, yes.
Excellent. Yay, technology worked. So the big part about, being a department chair and connecting with your, your faculty, adjunct, part-time faculty is, just the communication part of it, your availability. One thing I've always learned from my life, it's always look for the good role models, good mentors to have and follow what they do. Some of the best role models I've had in terms of my own career are people who haven't done it well. So I make note to myself, I am not going to be like that person. I remember one of my graduate professors literally would sit down in class and just read from the book. That was class, page 1, page 2. And I was like, nope, never going to teach class like that if I ever teach. The same thing with availability, having an open door. If you have a door to your office, having the door open. When people come over to you and ask a question, take a moment, stop what you're doing, and even just body language. It speaks a lot when talking to your adjunct faculty. Stop typing. Like I could type and look over to the side and have a whole conversation and still be typing and be fine. But to me, I can do it. But what message am I sending to my faculty that, hey, I'm still typing, I'm half listening to what you're doing because I'm still typing the email, but I'm looking at you. So change your body language, look at what you're doing. Another part is, trying to get out and connect with as much as you can. I know it's hard, especially when we're just talking about work-life balance before, but when you have new faculty coming in, or just once right when the semester starts, being available just to kind of do a quick walk by at all the classes that are running for the first week or two of the semester is just kind of walk by and just, make your face known and stop by, wave hi to the students and just, say hi to the faculty, stop by their class, just, to engage with them or check on them before class starts and say, hey, do you need anything? How are things going? Having that visibility helps. Again, with the work-life balance, it's just trying to do it. You don't want to do it all the time, but you want to just be, make a presence versus hand someone their contract, hand someone the syllabi and say, thanks for teaching the class, see you in 16 weeks. Part of the thing with the adjunct faculty, being one myself, I've been teaching for 16 years now as an adjunct faculty member, as a full-time faculty member as well too, is sometimes when you get that syllabi and say, okay, thanks for teaching the class, it's a 7 p.m. class on a Thursday night, good luck, you kind of feel like, all right, I'm off on an island by myself. So having just like swinging by or having that conversation really does wonders for those individuals to feel like they're not on an island. They are part of a team, a cohesive team. One thing that I like to do as well too in my role when I wasn't the chair is to provide constant updates, not inundate them with emails every single day, but like, once or twice, a term or semester, depending if it was an 8-week program or a 16-week program, it's just provide updates. Hey, this is what's going on. Hey, just a reminder that finals are coming up. These are your final dates. Hey, remember, we're on, this is a 3-day weekend. The university or college is closed on Monday. Be sure to remind your students, Thanksgiving is on Thursday. We only have half a day in classes on Wednesday. I have had faculty members show up Wednesday night at 7 p.m. for a class and wonder why their student's not there and then get mad because no one reminded them of that. So having those little things, and it's a lot of the nice part is once you do it, you save that email, you save that and keep it in a folder. A lot of what I do from the communication standpoint, I have a whole folder of standardized things I would send out. Hey, it's that time of year again, and I just tweak the dates and tweak that out and send it out to them. Send myself calendar invites. Hey, remember to send this email out for Thanksgiving, that helps. But it makes a big difference because they feel that they're part of the larger whole. Sometimes when I see, typical things of new adjuncts coming in, hey, I don't know what to put in for announcements, or hey, what do I do for this? Provide kind of suggestions. Here's some of the standardized, graphics we send out in our announcements of who to contact and, counseling services, or when's advising opened, all those type of set things. Welcome to the team. Here's a flash drive or access to our Google Drive with like some preset announcements that they can kind of get the ball rolling and see how the communication and see how things are. And the big part is, trying to have a storehouse of resources for them that they can access all the time, whether it's my shared Google Drive or a OneDrive, depending on how your university works, where they can see, who's who, organizational charts, phone numbers of all important, team members on our team or across the university. You'd be amazed, faculty teaching late night classes and you have a student in crisis and the first thing they go is, who do I call? I don't know who to call. Knowing that there's a site, I can log in real quick. Oh yeah, Mike left this number. Okay, I call this, or I call security for this. Those type of processes really make a difference. What are some of the things all of you have done in your roles in terms of trying to build communication?
That they're not shy. So
that's what I'm saying. You guys are all
somebody-
talking. Either I'm really boring or I've no one's like no.
but they're also humble. So this is the time to, tell us what has gone well. Yeah, Jochen has her hand up. Thank you.
I guess this is a sort of in the lane of communication, but when I was a chair, we started sort of a tradition at the faculty meeting. We will share our good news, whether it's personal, professional. You have a paper published, you got an award, you got a funding. A lot of times people are doing their things. Even though we are in the same department, but you don't know what's going on. So I think that was a good way to sort of connect everyone and also keep that kind of communication more sharing. I guess it's more sharing than communication, in terms of their professional as well as personal lives if they want to share.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's great. I mean, even though you're sharing it, you're also providing a level of communication, because I've had times where I was assistant dean of the School of Business and Advanced Manufacturing Technologies, where someone has worked on a research or a paper, and then someone in another program's like, that stuff? Great. I have a class I need someone to fill. It's like that communication, it opens up doors and people didn't realize they had skill sets. Can you be a guest? Myers-Briggs? Great. You can come in and guest speak for that part. So yeah, I mean, that's, and it also provides the recognition, because like you said,
yes,
all semester long, people are just their heads down and focused in their classes and grading. And then you say, hey, so-and-so's done this, or so-and-so got this grant. These are great things to share. Anyone else?
We used to do adjunct meetings at night. So we would have an adjunct coordinator. And then we would talk about their contract as far as adjuncts are concerned, their responsibilities, how to get promotions, things that would affect them day to day. Whether it's a course information sheet, the syllabus, anything that would expedite or continue to improve their experiences as a professor or teacher. And then also, secondly, they have success breakfasts here at Monroe Community College, where they have the adjuncts come and they can participate and have conversations across the college as to what has been successful, and everyone can share their ups and downs, or if you will, challenges and strengths, and then they walk out of there with some good tools. And again, it's more of a, here's a mentor sitting at a table, and then we share our stories, and then try to bring some more positive and more appreciative approaches to adjuncting. And they love it. I think they love it because they feel appreciated.
Absolutely. I mean, who doesn't like free breakfast and have those type of things? That's a big part. But like you mentioned, the part with mentoring. I mean, mentoring has always been a major personal love of mine. Is something that I've done outside of just even teaching everything else. I mentor a lot of professionals, and and also continue to be a mentee myself with my own with my own mentors. having that guide and having someone, I'm invested in you, let me help you get to where you want to be. Hey, you're an adjunct now, but you want to be a full-time professor someday, you want to be chair. Having someone kind of be involved in that and, you know, give you those tools really, like you said, gives a level of appreciation, but, you know, ownership and connection to the, you know, the institution that they're working at.
You know, one of the things that we do in the the week before fall semesters, we have an adjunct orientation, that's what we call it, which involves a meal, a luncheon. We usually start with that, and then we bring in the functional areas to talk about new things that have happened. You know, we're up with, you know, any updates in Banner, Brightspace, things that we see might be a sticking point through the semesters. Having people come in and giving information about important deadlines, you know, just again reinforce those things, that these, you know, the never attended dates and that, and also an opportunity for them to share, you know, some of their best practices or how they've worked with these changes if they've come across them already. So it's a rather nice time for us to come together and have a cohort and we have not just the adjuncts, but we also invite the faculty to join as well, so that they feel that they're part of the team.
Awesome. And usually like about an hour and a half, 2 hours when you kind of do those type of
Yeah, we plan for 2 hours for that, but, you know, a first half hour is, you know, just eating and
Yep.
and
networking and building connections with each other.
yeah.
Excellent. Ashley?
In my department, we've started doing like a monthly teaching talk or teaching gathering, not a formal thing, but just where we all get together and share some of our successes and some of the challenges. I found that was really beneficial. We've had adjuncts and full-time come together on that. And some of the adjuncts have had a lot of good experiences that our full-time faculty are asking more information from. So I feel like it gives a different power dynamic in that setting. I also like the very small things like onboarding. We don't have a great onboarding process, I think, and I think a lot of people share that. But at the beginning of the semester, I sent an email to our adjunct faculty, just welcoming them, but also sending them information on where the adjunct office is, how to open the door, the code for the faculty and staff wellness lounge, things that they probably were told at one point but forgot about. And it seemed like they were very appreciative of that, more than I thought they were. So just reminding them of spaces that are open to them and available to them and how they can get involved. So that worked.
No, that's a great idea, especially when, you know, when it comes to those, even the combination lock, the lock changes because someone else gave the code out, you know, one of the lounges to somebody else, you know, having those updates, remembering those resources are there, or, hey, if you need to print something out, here you go. I mean, that's a really good part. In terms of like the adjunct meeting sessions and stuff like that, does anyone take that opportunity to do like professional development outside of your typical, you know, dates and important elements, but like provide, you know, if for instance, one of your fellow faculty members got certified in Universal Design for Learning or got certified in Myers-Briggs, do they get a chance to bring that in and kind of provide those practices in so the adjuncts can learn about that as well?
It's a good suggestion. I've seen one hand up from, I don't know who that is because it's coming in as iPhone, but is that you, Ching?
Oh yes, hello. Sorry, because I was driving. Yeah, thank you for the great presentation. I've learned a lot from your presentation and also, you know, the cohorts talks. I have a question. Sometimes it's not that we as a department don't want to organize any, you know, orientation or adjunct professor meetings. It's just for some reason, you know, because this is their part-time job, they have another full-time job with a scheduling conflict. Many of them don't attend. So we do offer these, you know, orientations and, you know, the extended department meetings, but they don't attend. So, but I did hear that, you know, the idea of adjunct orientation Kelly and from other cohorts. So how do you deal with this low attendance to the adjunct professor meetings and or orientations or even trainings?
That's a great question, and one that I think we've all ran into and dealt with. I think the big part, I think someone mentioned before, food. Food is always a great enticer for somebody, for that, whether however you schedule it. So for instance, when I was chair, most of my adjuncts, my full-time faculty taught during the day, and most of the adjuncts took care of the night classes. So it was a 5 p.m. adjunct meeting we would have. So we would cover dinner, whether that was pizza, whether that was wraps or some type of thing. We would always cover dinner and some really good desserts. That would work for that part of it. The other thing we did as well too, we noticed, especially I'm more of a tech-oriented person, clearly by how my dissertation was with virtual teams and stuff like that. We would also provide these, when we did these adjunct meetings, we would actually pick one of the classrooms that had cameras and, prior to COVID, when, you had a camera in a room that wasn't typical, we'd grab one of those rooms and we would live stream what we were doing in the trainings as well too. So your adjuncts who were working till 5 o'clock and can't get to where they need to be on campus till afterwards can log in right from work or log in when they're driving home and listen and pay attention to it. We provided that option as well too. They may not be in person, but they can also still participate in that way as well too. So that helped significantly a lot. One thing we would also do when we started noticing a decline in hey, not many people are showing up on Tuesday nights at 5 o'clock anymore for adjunct meetings. One thing I would do is actually send out emails to everybody in the business school and say, hey, here's some of the dates and times we're looking at. What would work best for you? Is it Tuesdays at 5 o'clock? Is it Wednesdays at 6? Would Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock in the morning? Please don't, because I already work 5 days a week, not Saturday mornings. But if that worked best for my team to get the adjuncts there, we would do that, and we would get based on their feedback. And we have adjusted meetings based, on Monday nights versus Tuesday nights, and we kind of go in the ebb and the flow of depending on the semester. That helped having that email out earlier so if it was for a fall training, I would do it somewhere around end of July, August, just to see where people are at, and that helped out a lot for that, having that feedback of what worked best for you. Because at the end of the day, you're supporting, it is a part-time job for them, but they also know that the more visible they are, generally when, if you're the visible adjunct and you have a class that needs to be filled, the first person you're going to think about who's always in your face and who's always, visible when you're at these meetings. You're not going to think about someone off to the side. So adjuncts tend to want to be a little more visible as the opportunities present themselves.
Mike, I want to thank you for your time. I know we're already 2 minutes past, but I also crept into your time. We have such an eager group this morning or this afternoon to ask questions, which I love. And this is our whole purpose, is to engage you in these live sessions. But can I see if you're open to answering I see 2 hands up, if they can put their questions in the chat so that we can, we still have 2 more pieces of our agenda today, and I want to make sure that we stick to our plan here and have enough time. Would that work for you, Mike?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can. I can.
Great.
Do you want me to answer them in the chat or just send an email?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the 2 people who have the questions, if you don't mind writing your questions in the chat, and then we can keep the agenda moving, that would be great. And again, I just want to thank you, Mike, for your time putting together this time for us to talk about how to engage all of our staff, including our adjuncts and part-time faculty. So this has been great, and happy to take your slide deck and put it in Brightspace afterwards as a resource as well. Thank you. It's wonderful to make the connection with you.
Absolutely. And I can put my contact information in the chat as well too. So if anyone has any questions or follow-up stuff, feel free to ever reach out. I'm always around.
Thank you.
Yep.
So with that, we have one more topic that we're going to talk about before we have everyone take a formal break. But we'll have a 15-minute break at 3:30. But before at 3:15, excuse me. But before then, we are going to continue on sort of the same topic. This is engaging all of our staff. And so from even before they walk in our door, and they're part of the team, we want to be thinking about all people and making sure that we're creating an environment people want to be a part of. And so to do this, we've assembled a panel of SUNY system colleagues. And so I'm going to spotlight them for you so you can see who they are. But they're going to be talking about hiring practices, advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they're going to bring this into modern SUNY system culture and policies and things that they're talking about here in Albany that we were hoping reach their way to you as a department chair at a campus. And so without further ado, I'm going to spotlight for you my awesome colleagues, Yolanda Caldwell. Hello, Yolanda. And
hello,
we
Carolyn. Hello, everyone.
And we also have with us the amazing Krista Grant. Hello, Krista.
Hello, everyone.
And sorry, I'm doing my own technology here today. So hello, Ricardo. I'm going to add a spotlight to you too.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. And so we have an hour for us to continue on this topic. We're going to go until 3:15, and then they've earned themselves a break. This is a half-day live learning session for our chairs. But thank you so much for coming together and opening a discussion about hiring here at SUNY.
Perfect. We're going to share screen. Do I have that ability, Carolyn?
Yeah, I've given everybody in the group co-host, so anybody can share.
Can everyone see? Okay.
Perfect.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And like Carolyn said, today we will focus on hiring practices, advancing diversity, equity, inclusion across SUNY campuses. We would just want to take a second to do a quick introduction before we get started. We will go backward in this order. I am Krista Grant, and I use the she, they pronoun. I am the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Inclusive Excellence, as well as the Executive Director for the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Leadership Institute. So I'll turn it over to Yolanda.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yolanda Caldwell. I am the Director of Inclusive Leadership and Organizational Development at SUNY System Administration.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ricardo Nazario Colon, Senior Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and System Chief Diversity Officer. So on today's agenda, we're going to cover hidden biases in hiring. We'll talk briefly about the Prodigy Plus programs. We'll do a reflection, and we'll share some resources and Q&A. So the main objectives for today, reviewing cognitive biases and their influence on departmental culture and hiring, deepen understanding of SUNY's Prodigy Plus initiative, which we have two of them. We have the Prodigy Plus and the Prodigy Plus Community College. Then strengthen our collective responsibility for advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI.
So one of our objectives is to be the employer of choice. We really want individuals who you're interviewing and who you're looking at to really think of SUNY as this is the place that I want to be. And what we want to talk to you about a little bit is how to have an inclusive search. So there are three concepts that we would like your search committee chairs, your search committee to consider when they think of an inclusive search. So as you have these conversations, and even with your teams now, share this information and this concept so that it can become a part of your departmental culture. So one is to be intentional. Be intentional in planning and participating in the search. So what does that mean? That means thinking about managing the calendar, setting time aside to review the material, but really be purposeful in understanding their role to ensure that the search is inclusive. Many times individuals will make decisions, or a candidate may not get a full, thorough review because of time. So it's really important that being intentional is considered. Second is be reflective on your first thought and really minimize groupthink. The most verbal committee member can be encouraged to listen to others, and the most quiet committee members can be encouraged to share their perspectives. So what we're asking you to do, and as you work with your team, is really begin to create environments or processes to ensure that each member of your committee is heard throughout the hiring process. So at each stage and at each phase, make sure that there are feedback loops, communication loops, ways in which individuals can share their perspective. And we really want to encourage individuals to ensure that the conversations and the decisions are really related to the job requirements. And then we're going to talk a little bit about being organized. It is really important that as you go through your process is that you plan in advance and then communicate in a manner that reduce search committee members of not having all of the requisite information in a timely fashion. So have a process and then follow your process and ensure that your teams are trained and understand each step of the process. Next, Krista. So let's talk a little bit about bias. The Cambridge definition is actions of supporting or opposing a thing, an idea, a person, a group in an unfair way. So in practice, this can be described as conscious or either unconscious bias, attitudes, or either stereotypes. Our perspectives, our attitudes have strongly been shaped by socialization. And Bobby Harrow, who's a sociologist, shared that in the cycle of socialization, we begin to be socialized at birth, and it continues through familial, social, cultural, and institutional socialization. And then it's reinforced through a system of rewards and punishments, and then it manifests itself in our actions and our decisions. So it is not a moral failing to have bias. It's a human reality. But conscious bias is things that you're aware of and you can explain, and you choose if you're going to continue to support those opinions or make adjustments. Unconscious, or what we call implicit bias, you may not be able to explain so easily, and it's hard to make a choice to refrain from acting on that bias. So I want to ask each one of you to take a moment and consider this. You walk into a room and there are people standing in this room. They're representing multi-generations, cultures, gender identities, and abilities. And I'm going to ask you to identify the professor in that group. So everyone has the professor that's in their mind. That person who you imagined could be an indication of your preference, your bias. And we're asking you and encouraging you to be open to others as well. That might be who you believe should be the person in the front of the room, but we're asking you to be open to think about others who can serve in that role. Next. So, why did you select that person? There are many possible reasons. You can only process a limited amount of information in a moment, and we use various mental shortcuts every single day. These cognitive biases are generally hidden, and they're kind of like automatic things that we do that when we take in information and we understand what's happening around us. They shape our decisions, our judgments, often without us realizing. These biases can twist how we really see reality and sometimes causes misunderstandings. So here we're going to go over a few that may show up in the hiring process. So one, we're going to talk about contrast bias. So when you talk about or think about contrast bias, it's the tendency for an applicant to be compared to the performance of previous applicants. So for instance, you're going through the process, you interview someone, and they are amazing. Everyone likes them. They think they're great. All of your others that come after that, if this contrast effect shows up, is that you compare the other candidates to that first candidate, that first person who you were impressed by. And what we're sharing with you is that the process is not to, at that point in time, is not to compare them to each other. It is to compare each person against the requirements. So it's really important to think about that when you're in your deliberations and you're having conversations, is as a group, to reduce that group think, is to go back to how does this person measure up to the requirements, not to a previous candidate that we just interviewed. The next we're going to talk about is the halo and the horn effect. This is when you rely on one good or one bad thing that an applicant did. So an applicant comes in, they're doing really well. You ask a question, they stumble on the question a little bit, but they recover in the next question and they continue through the process. That horn effect will come into play if every time you're discussing the candidate's viability to move forward, you continue to bring up the mistake that they made and use that to colorize or to determine how they move forward because of one thing and not looking at the total picture. And the exact same thing can happen with the halo effect. They do one thing, they knock a question out of the park, and it clouds your vision to see the other areas in which they may not be meeting the requirements. And then the final one we'll touch on really quick is similar to me. You may find someone that has something that's similar to you. They come from your state, they came from your alma mater. Something about them makes you relate to them in a different way. And what we're saying is that is great. We love to be in community with others that we have connections with. We're just asking that you not let that be the thing that determines that they're moving forward in the process. Still look at them in comparison to the job requirements, as well as looking at their candidacy and their package in a holistic manner. So it's really, there are many more, but these are the ones that we wanted to highlight for you to consider today. And now Ricardo will share with you more information about how bias can show up in the process.
Thank you, Yolanda. So biases can show up in many ways in the hiring process. We'll highlight 4 areas here. In the job description, the language that we use, there are words that we often use within the academy that make sense to us inside the academy, but may prevent other people from applying who are not in the academy. And this is language that we use regularly. We might talk about fit or culture fit. We might go as far as right, we're looking for a rock star or a digital native person. Someone might read that and say to themselves, well, I am not digitally native. I wasn't born with a computer in my hand. I'm not going to apply for this job because they're looking for someone who's been with computers since day one. So we have to be careful about that. Screenings or shortlisting. So I got a gut feeling, or they seem like one of us. That kind of language gets in the way, and that's a form of bias that begins, as Yolanda just finished talking about, creep into the search. So we have to guard for that, okay? When we do reference checks, let's be careful because bias also exists within the references, right? So, and we're not aware. So sometimes we put extreme weight on the reference checks, and it can tank the candidate without giving the candidate an opportunity to respond, or without us considering the source. Why would someone offer these commentaries about a candidate whom we have just finished screening, and they are the opposite of what we heard? There needs to be more investigation rather than say, this candidate is no good, their references were bad. Let's find out what's going on there before that. Informal interactions. You probably heard of collegiality. Can I eat a sandwich with you at lunch for the next 20 years? Or the airport, effect. Can I sit at the airport next to this person, you know, in a traffic delay? These are informal ways that we relate to individuals. We call it the collegiality effect, right? Can I see you? Can our children play together? Can our spouses spend time with one another? Can I spend time with you? We begin to project things onto the candidates. So the department can have some impacts to reduce these manifestations of biases. So we as a department, we begin to do things that can help us. When the processes favor similarity, organizations lose out. So perspectives, creativity, and market adaptability. So we have to make sure that we spend the necessary time that is needed to identify a good candidate. Make sure that we're not perpetuating homogeneity. Let's look for individuals that can add value to our existing cohesiveness, right? Not someone that's going to be exactly like we are, but someone that can add something new to the mix that we already have. So it's a different lens, a different perspective that we can utilize to ensure that we have a good hire as well, that we push back against biases. So moving on. Biases shape the following dynamics, right? Norms of belonging and inclusion, who feels empowered to speak, retention and advancement pathways. This is ways that biases can shape our dynamics on campus. So we need to be explicit or implicit with, where biases, whether biases are explicit or implicit, they determine who feels truly welcome or who is subtly or overly excluded. Norms that are historically established often privilege certain identities, backgrounds, and perspectives. So we need to figure out how these norms become the standard and how we measure people against these, because they will marginalize individuals. Individuals from not only underrepresented groups, but from different groups may feel the need to assimilate, code switch, or remain silent. And that tends to erode authenticity as well as engagement. So who feels empowered to speak comes from bias influences whose voices are perceived or credible and whose leadership styles are validated. So Yolanda mentioned someone that's similar to us. So we look for that leadership style that's similar to the ones that we're used to or we utilize. And we reinforce through behavior, through opportunity, those individuals to continue to put forward that behavior. And in the opposite, it marginalizes other individuals who do not behave that way, but it's a different style, not necessarily a better style. Individuals aligned with dominant cultural norms are often encouraged to take on visible roles, while others are labeled as not ready or not a fit, regardless of their actual competence, right? So again, we want ourselves to look a certain way, and we want to reward those individuals that show that display that behavior. Over time, right? This narrows the leadership pipeline, and it allows only a few individuals to rise within the ranks of our members. So the impact on retention, bias entrenches disparities in mentorship access, high impact assignments, performance evaluations, and promotion opportunities. So we have to be careful how biases creep in on these, a very important part of someone's career. Talented individuals may exit the organization due to feelings of undervalue or limited upward mobility. And that includes opportunities to join research, opportunities to be in the leadership, to head committees, a variety of things. So the department can reinforce or interrupt these biases on a daily basis, right? There are many of opportunities where departments as a collective can have an influence here. So departments as the microculture of the institution either reinforce or interrupt these biases through daily practices. So reference checks, when not structured equitably, these can perpetuate negative stereotypes and implicit bias from environments outside of our organization. Okay. Next. So the cost of inaction. So we are familiar that, you know, when we do a bad hire, it can cost a lot to the institution, to the organization. Similarly, not addressing biases can also have a cost to the organization, to the department, to the institution. Not addressing biases within the culture of a department can drive away talent. Good faculty may choose to go somewhere else and restart their tenure clock because they don't see a future for themselves, or they don't see the culture evolving to a point where they feel comfortable in staying. And we understand that when we hire individuals, we're not only hiring them, but we're also hiring their families. So what happens at work also has an impact on their families at home. And some people safeguard that as well and don't want their families to experience anything that they're experiencing on campuses. So they may opt to leave if we don't take action. Reputational risk. So if a faculty leaves or an individual leaves an institution, an organization, the question might arise either during the interview or in social circles, in professional circles. Why did you leave? It seemed like such a great opportunity. And that opens the door for more conversations around the environment and what was at play at that institution. Some of it we cannot control. People will speak and say things that they want to say, but we can give a great effort to ensure that our reputation is protected by trying to address this part of the experience for individuals. We also know that students have an impact when there is a lack of diversity within the ranks of the employees of an organization. We know that all students benefit from having faculty and staff from diverse backgrounds that positively impacts their collegiate experience. So that is also a piece that if we do not address it, we may be shortchanging the experience of our collegiate students. Okay, so I'll pass it over to Krista.
So while Yolanda and Ricardo focus more on the practical stuff in terms of DEI and hiring practices, I want to shift the conversation to talk about what we are doing as SUNY system to enhance our diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring effort. As you all may know, when Chancellor King joined SUNY as a chancellor, one of his pillars that he has identified is diversity, equity, inclusion. And under his leadership and guidance, we have rebranded the Podigy initiatives, which is now called Podigy Plus and Podigy Plus Community College, which stand for promoting recruitment, opportunity, diversity, inclusion, and growth. So this specific both system-wide initiative is to enhance the number and share of excellent, diverse faculty committed to advancing the ideals of diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as strengthening the pipeline for retention and support of these candidates with intentional support. And I want to take a pause here to make sure that I separate the difference between the Podigy Plus program at state operate campus versus Podigy Plus program at community college. For Apology Plus at State Ops campuses, it is a postdoc fellowship with a specific, both programs have a very specific intention to work with the fellows, how to prepare them to become 10-year track faculty. So while they are not teaching heavy, they are focusing on research and professional development. And here are the 4 components of the Apology Plus program when we rebrand and reimagine the initiatives. One is to do cluster hiring, which allow the Apology Plus fellows to go through the process together in relations to professional development, understanding the SUNY system, SUNY culture in general, and how to move forward as a group with the shared experiences in becoming a 10-year track faculty on campus. The program specifically put in the effort to enhance intentional mentorship and also retention. When we work with our campuses who have the Apology Plus fellows, it is important that the campuses provide targeted support for professional growth, either through having faculty mentor throughout their 2 years in the fellowship, and also providing specific support in their professional development. Last but not least, we are working with each campus who have Apology Plus fellow to hold them accountable through annual reporting and also assessment, intentional assessment efforts.
Thank you, Krista. So our collective role, right? Individually, we need to reflect on our biases and work to reduce them. One of the exercises that I personally do and recommend is that we pause. When we think about something and we're not quite sure, let's pause, let's examine. I know that in this world, when things are moving really fast, we want to make a quick decisions, but we want to make the right decision. And pausing allows us to think deeper and to think and make a decision with intention rather than with speed. Stay committed to continuous learning and growth. These ideas change over time. There's more research being done over time and currently, so who knows what this work will look like in 10 years and how we understand the human psychic. So it would be important for us to continue to learn more about this area throughout our careers. From the departmental point of view, one of the most basic things the department can do is review our policies. Sometimes we're operating with policies that haven't been reviewed or changed in over 20 years. They might go as far as last century, which was 26 years ago, right? So I know no one wants to go back there, but sometimes we need to. Sometimes we need to look at our policies and say, do they make sense in today's market? Do they make sense for today's higher education, for the institution that we're building for tomorrow? Do these policies align? So let's take a fresh look. We need to create a clear, fair path for faculty to stay and grow in their careers, right? So we want to ensure that we not only hire you to come here, but we want you to stay here. So let's figure out how to invest in the future of our faculty. And this is something that we've been doing throughout the history of higher education. So let's not forget that. Be aware that bias during reference checks exists. Use fair and consistent processes, right? So if you send the questions ahead to the person, do it for everybody. Do not rush. Build it into the search process. Ensure that you give yourself ample time. This sometimes can be done at the beginning or after, but make sure that you have time within your search process to conduct a fair reference check. Recognize that departments can either reinforce or challenge biases on a daily basis. And I just talked about this. Build a culture of respect and inclusion to support all the members on your campus. We all want to work in an environment that appreciates us for our talents, for our abilities, and that respects the work that we do for the institution. Institutionally, our job here at SUNY is to help campuses think about how to expand their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, how to participate in programs like Prodigy Plus to strengthen the diversity of faculty, how to build pipelines, to understand that a less diverse faculty reduces student success and a sense of belonging, and to recognize that bias limits new ideas and keeps things the same. Diversity drives innovation and excellence. Next one. So let's look at some practical steps, right? We can conduct a thorough audit of our current and upcoming job postings to identify biases or that language that I pointed out at the beginning of the presentation. We can also replace jargon and gender coded words like rock star or aggressive or go-getter with neutral and welcoming language. We can highlight organizational commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion explicitly in posting. And you can work with your human resources department and with your campus chief diversity officer to find this language to help you craft a better job posting. So make sure you take care of that. Sometimes is beneficial to use structured rubrics. Sometimes it's not. I will let you make that decision when it's appropriate and if it's appropriate for your particular area. But do not dismiss an area because this tool, just because it might warrant a little bit of extra work. We don't often hire, right? Not all departments hire people all the time. So when we do hire, things can feel new or things may be different than the last time you conducted a hire. So it might, as a new leader, you might want to start now having conversations with human resources to find out what the process looks like today from a hiring side of the house, right? As a candidate, you may have experienced it recently, but from the hiring side of the house, what does the process look like? What is the expectation? So you can engage in that. Develop standardized ways to guide and direct the job-related competencies and responsibilities. Train all the interviewers. Hopefully your campus has a search committee training program that would allow your members of your search committee to understand what the process is like and how to avoid things like biases. Require written justification for each score to promote accountability and transparency. Don't just say accept a number of ratings without some justification. This requires more effort, but it gives you more information to make that decision if you are the hiring official. And make sure you keep this information to ensure that you have this for the future. Engage with colleagues from other departments or even external partners to train in equitable hiring practices. If there's a department on your campus that has been noted for doing excellent hires, find out from them how they do it. Let them share those experiences, those best practices on your campus. They might help you avoid some pitfalls and some delays. And we know that time is crucial in the hiring process because it is always competitive. So any tidbits that you can get from colleagues in navigating the process will be helpful. Establish clear roles and expectations for people who are reviewing and ensure alignment with organizational hiring goals. Provide appropriate confidential and bias training and confidentiality and bias training before involving the reviewers. Again, I go back to search committee training being very important. Next slide. So as we envision the future, a department where all talent thrives and belongs, we strive to cultivate a department ecosystem where every individual is not merely present, but deeply valued. A space where talent are not just recognized, but fully unleashed. So making sure that we take advantage of everything that our colleagues have to offer and that we support that to ensure that they feel engaged and valued. A culture that values curiosity over comfort. We want people to constantly be exploring new ideas. Even if you are at an institution that focuses on teaching and not so much in research, we still are committed to keeping up with our discipline, to understanding how our discipline changes, to understanding the different tools that are available to us as faculty, with AI being a big part of the discussion nowadays. How are we going to allow and provide opportunity for our faculty to engage with this new tool to ensure that we deploy it appropriately on our campuses? So supporting our colleagues is going to be critical in the area of development, not as researchers, but even as individuals that focus on the teaching aspect of the house. A future-proof institution, I don't know that that exists, but we certainly can work towards that. So to become future-proof, we commit to perpetual renewal. We commit to constantly reevaluating ourselves, looking at our procedures, not settling for what worked today, but thinking about how can we improve this, especially when we are not always engaged in the hiring process. We want to make sure that we are prepared for that eventuality where we are adding new individuals who are going to enhance our department, who are going to help us move our department into the future. Okay.
So, as we've had this conversation today, we have a couple of things we want you to reflect upon. And we can talk about it as a group. I think we have a few minutes if anyone wants to share. But these are two reflection questions. One, what is one hidden bias you might hold in the hiring process? Or two, what is one immediate action you can take to interrupt it? So if anyone is willing to have that conversation with us about something they can do to interrupt a bias or something that they can do to make their environment more inclusive or their search process more inclusive, we would love to have this conversation with you. Or if you have any questions about what we presented today. Rodina?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for sharing. That was really insightful because I just recently served on two search committees, but one of them, we recently hired a full-time journalism instructor in the department, and everyone in our department was on the search committee. But to make it and then we had to have a DEI rep, and then we also had to make it an odd number. We had to get like two faculty members that were in another department. But in listening to what you all presented today, does that present any level of bias if everyone in the department, although we created a rubric that we thought was as objective as possible, but as the department, it was really important for us to be involved. So, because we know exactly what we're looking for in an instructor, but now I'm just wondering, is that the right way? And I see that other departments do that as well. Like especially for teaching faculty, many of the department members will be involved in the search process and really kind of guide the rubric development.
Well, I'll add to it. I think that having the entire department involved is important because this is going to be your colleague. But I believe that you should have a structured search process where your department is one of various stakeholders. Depending on who the hiring official is it the department or is it the dean?
Yeah.
So
So if I could just get more, so yes, we meet with HR, we had the DEI training, we have a DEI rep, and we submit 3 candidates, and then the hiring team is the dean and the provost work together to make the final decision.
Yeah, so as long as you have information for them to make the decision, I think that's appropriate. Having everyone involved and getting feedback from everyone. I think there was something that you said, we know what we're looking for because we teach this. I will ask you to pause on that as colleagues. Let's pause. What does that mean to us? And are we looking for someone that looks just like us, who is right? Or are we focusing on the job description?
Oh, no, the job not from an ethnicity or race.
No, yeah.
Right, yeah. So if we're looking for, like in that case, it was a journalism instructor, but because our background is that, we did, we knew what we were looking for, I guess I'm saying this.
Yeah. And in knowing what you're looking for, could you miss something?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Right. That's what I'm getting at. But yeah, no, I think you were fine. Yes.
Yeah, I see it. Thank you.
I have done some implicit bias training. Oh, I'm sorry. Did somebody raise their hand?
Dr. Juan?
I can't raise my hand, so.
It's okay. Go ahead, and I will do it afterwards.
Dr. Juan.
Oh, Dr. Wong, go.
Okay. Okay. So I just want to thank you for the presentation. Hi, Yolanda and Krista. Good to see you here. I just want to I guess share one experience in my department in previous hirings. We had a senior faculty who obviously has served many years in the university. Now he's retired. At the various hiring meetings, he will say, "Oh, this is not good fit for our department." Right? So it was very, and there's no explanation, but that fit was mentioned quite a few times in my department. So I guess in the future, if something like that happens, we should just pause. What do you mean by fit, not fit for the department, and really go back to more objective sort of reasonings, indicators, and so on. So, but I do have a question, and I thank you for what you are doing at SUNY and the Prodigy Plus program. Obviously, is really wonderful. And I just want to know, I don't know how many years this program has been in place. Do you have any sort of measurement indicators in terms of how successful these programs have been and what kind of impact they have had on the campus, on the departments, and so on? I just want to get a sense of overall kind of assessment for the 2 Prodigy Plus program. Thank you.
So the first cohort, we just wrap up the first cohort, and the first cohort will be going on is 2nd year. So short answer is no, we don't have the exact data to let you know how successful the program will be. Our hope is that all of the Prodigy Plus fellow will meet their department and also campus expectation, and will have an extended offer to become tenure track faculty on their campus. We are actively working with campuses to finish hiring for the 2nd cohort, and then we are about to launch the 3rd cohort application in the upcoming weeks. So again, this is a new iteration of the Prodigy programs with expectation from the chancellor that we will create a pipeline for over 400 postdoctoral fellows.
Thank you. But do we have a Prodigy program that's longer than this, right? There's a separate program before the Prodigy Plus?
There is a we sunset the last Prodigy program, and out of that program under previous administration, that program, I would say, did not yield the expectation and the results that we would hope for. There were definitely some fellows who become tenure track faculty, but not every single person who have the fellowship became a tenure track faculty due to campus's budget and other reason. And that's why this administration, we work really closely with the campuses to make sure that there are resources that are in place to support that tenure track faculty line after the fellowship is over.
Great, thank you.
Douglas, before you ask your question, I just wanted to go back to Ms. Stevens. And when you talk about the entire department being involved with your searches, just think about seniority. And did everyone, even though they participated, did everyone feel heard? And did everyone feel as if they had the ability to prevent groupthink from being the primary way in resulting, meaning deferring to those who had more seniority? So it's just something to think about when the entire department is involved. How does seniority play into that? How do newer faculty members feel what their voice is in that type of dynamics? I think Douglas was next, and then Mario.
Thank you. One of the things that probably all of us have been through is just trying to understand the current market that we're in with diversity, equity, inclusion. But more importantly, as we try to go out and recruit new faculty members, it's been very, very difficult, at least on our end, to try to get a very diverse candidate pool. And so one of the things that always comes to my head is, how do we do that, right? So I think there's not enough effort put into advertising for some of these positions, in my opinion, in the right places. So that's one. Two is, and I'll villainize myself, I always find that when I'm doing interviews that I tend to actually lean into people that are more like myself. And we all know that's a terrible thing we do. It's terrible that I do it. And I always have to bring my mind to the place of, okay, you gotta get out of this person's like me attitude and really look at the objectives we're trying to meet, which is who's the most qualified person. And sometimes it's just the way they speak, right? Because I grew up in a culture that maybe is different than they grew up in, and somehow that implicit bias is making me feel like they're different. They're not as qualified. Of course they are, but my point is that's my vice, right? And I recognize that. So I think that's powerful. And the other thing is, there was once when I was doing some implicit bias training one time, there was, and some of you might remember this, there was a picture that they used where there was a pool. And in the pool were all these people, and then on the side of the pool, there were all these people. And then the question was, who's in the picture? And in the picture, the one thing you could tell, there was some kind of implicit bias, because in there you would identify with people that look like you, and you would not think about the people that don't look like you, and you would miss those opportunities to recognize them. It was quite interesting to see how I personally just, my vision drew to certain things rather than other things that were actually in the picture. So anyway, I just sharing some stories of some training that I did and some realities, and then reflection that I had.
Thank you, Douglas. I posted a question as a follow-up to a comment you made. Yes, we are looking for the most qualified, but does everyone in the room who's interviewing this individual have the same understanding of what most qualified means for the purpose of the search? We want to ensure that we have the most qualified. What does that look like, right? We need to articulate that and not just say, well, everybody knows, how to teach chemistry, right? And we know what it takes to teach chemistry. We have to articulate, because there might be institutional goals that we're trying to meet. And if we're trying to meet institutional goal, it might be that second candidate who's not only very competent in the discipline, but who also has additional skills and abilities that can help us meet an institutional goal. So then that kind of shifts what most qualified might mean, right? So these are conversations that internally we need to have. But thank you, Douglas. That was very informative.
And Douglas, the other thing I would just share, when we talk about difficulty finding different candidates, is taking a moment and looking at how departments support participation in professional associations. If there's not networking taking place in other areas or other things, and your circle, your professional circle, is small, then yes, it is difficult sometimes to find individuals that can meet some of the institutional goals or bring different skill sets to the table. So it's just something to think about and to consider. And thank you again for sharing.
Mario?
Yeah, Mario.
Yes, this is a quick question. I was part of a search committee in my department, and we have some issues of communication because the chair wasn't part of the chair committee, and the communication between the chair of the search committee and the chair of the department wasn't efficient, and that caused some issues. So it's more questioning. As a chair, I think it will be fine if I haven't, or to participate in a search committee, but if I don't, what do you think about the communication? That's important. And the other part that I was concerned is we have a very large number of adjuncts. One of what I noticed in the last search is a bias that tends to be, let's get someone new. An adjunct has been there for a long time, and usually they say, well, let's bring new life to the department. When from my perspective, adjuncts are brilliant collaborators, can be really excellent candidates, but sometimes implicitly we said, oh, more of the same. And I don't know if sort of these two aspects are related, but it was one of the issues on our last search, that the chair was kind of frustrated because of the way we were managing the search, and she wasn't duly informed, but there was a conflict between the chair of the search committee and the chair, in a sense that what are exactly the way they should communicate regarding search. I don't know if I made myself clear.
I think it's important that we are constantly evaluating and looking for talent. I posted a question: do we search for candidates when we don't have a job opening? Right? Prospecting. What colleagues do we know at other institutions who we might say to ourselves, oh, it would be great if they were here? What individuals are out there? Have we ever invited them to offer a lecture on our campus? Have we ever asked them, hey, what would you like to do on your campus that right now you're unable to do? Right? That's information gathering. That's prospecting. That's letting you know, perhaps if we are able to help this individual who wants to launch this magnificent journal idea that they have, if we were able to provide the support that they needed, they might consider coming to our campus, right? So I think the shift in today's culture is that talent is highly competitive. There's no longer like localized talent that, oh, we have this pool of individuals that we can prospect from. because everybody's looking for that great opportunity. So we cultivating individuals, not only at conferences and other places, but even within the adjunct pool, taking time to really evaluate someone who's there on campus and seeing, is it the same, or are they really different? You know, and are they the same because we're not giving them an opportunity to show additional skills, right? Some individuals might just teach what we ask them to teach, but we never reach out to them to do more, right? What would that look like? Learning more about this existing talent pool on our campuses when we're not pressed to do a hire is critical. It's critical. You're gonna get more return on your investment if you are doing some pre-work for the eventuality that you are going to have a job opening.
Okay, I see that we are at time, but I also saw Ching's hand. Ching, you have 1 minute.
Hello, thank you for everyone's great presentation. I really learned a lot. I have a question, very quickly. What should I do if I encounter situations like bias situations in a actual search? What can I do, you know, as a committee member? And the other thing in terms of, you know, we should compare the candidates against the job description. Yes, but they are all best. Their credentials are all very high. If we do not compare with each other, what else can we do? You know, because we have to sort of make a ranking. Who is number one? Who is top? You know, top three. So what can we do if we do not compare among themselves? You know, because they are all of them are highly qualified. So two questions. Thank you.
So the second question is, we're saying there is a point in time in your process where you do make a comparison. What we're saying is during the initial review of applications or in your initial interviews, that you don't compare them and begin to eliminate individuals because they didn't match another candidate that interviewed. But yes, there does come a stage in your process in which you do look at the candidates in comparison to each other. We're just asking that you not do that so early on in the process.
And I think interrupting a bias moment, you just have to do it politely without naming it. You can ask for a small recess within the committee and have that ask the candidate to step outside, or you can wait until after the interview and note it to the individuals in the room to ensure that it doesn't negatively impact the decisions.
And also follow the process that your search committee trained you on, what they said you should do when that comes up in your process.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And a very, you know, 30 minutes, a quick comment is that as a minority female and minority person, I am one of them who really feel very strong about this presentation, about this, you know, equity in a search, because I myself has encountered the same situation, and my other colleagues, you know, have also encountered the same situation. So I really feel very strong about this initiative and the importance of this presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. Carolyn.
A couple of things that I just want to mention is, one, I just dropped the Apology Plus Fellowship website in the chat. As we launched a new cohort for cohort 3 and the cohort 2 for Apology Plus Community College, your campus presidents as well as your provost will have more in-depth information. The last piece I will also mention is that while you've We hope that you find the information that we provide today is relevant and helpful. We also want to remind you that you have a campus resource at your fingertips. Please reach out to your campus chief diversity officers. They would be able to provide more assistance in relations to your inclusive search and hiring. Thank you so much, everyone.
You're on mute, Carolyn.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming back. We just gave them a much earned break, Sue. So I've given you co-host privileges, and you can round out our session for the chairs today. They're focused today on managing time, talent, and money. So we've saved money for the home stretch here in their half-day session. And I gave you a bit of an introduction before you joined us, but Sue, it comes from the University at Albany, and she has a long history in higher ed leadership. I'm sure she'll share a little bit of her background, but she has been very supportive of the Sale Institute over the years, and we couldn't do it without her. So thank you so much for helping us to understand all important campus dollars.
Money, 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 money. You should be able to see my screen, yes?
Yes.
All right, let me just line you up so I can see you guys while you're seeing my screen. There we go. So just as a point of reference, my relationship with Department Money started as a department chair many years ago during the winter in Albany, looking out the window, seeing the snowplow clearing the parking lot outside my window, and wondering for the first time, who pays the snowplow? So you'll know this by the end of this session today. You'll know who pays the snowplow, and by the way, it's you in part. So here's my starting point with a quick survey of money. When you think about budget, what comes to mind? And you can kick a note into the chat. I've got to open my chat window so I can see. There we go. Just one word. What comes to mind? Besides not enough. Annual limits, stress, limitations, small. Yeah, resources, all good. Challenges, yeah. Need. Yeah, great. Cuts, coming. Headache assessment, yay. So in theory, money is in the academy is about, advancing our mission, paying for necessities, and promoting desired behavior. It's a headache, it's a resource, it's a challenge. It requires planning. And I've got a quick quiz for you. This is a thumbs up on the screen or in the chat, whatever. If you pass, if you get agree with 6 of these or more, you can just leave the session right now and go on to the rest of your day. Ready? Okay, so I know what the school college's priorities are. Yes. My dean leaves spending decisions up to me. Maybe. I know my school college budget person. They should be your best friend. I know what my department priorities are. I know what it costs to run my department. Most people don't. My faculty and staff understand our budget. Maybe not. And my last question is for experienced budgeters only. My favorite phrase is, if only we could. You'll remember that one as we come to the end of this. Okay, so anybody get more than six or more right? You can go on to the rest of your day. Okay. So some of the questions that chairs have are, what resources do I have? What can I control? I have somebody with a great idea that I want to support. Should I save money for a rainy day, or is it just going to get taken away from me? What's my role? Dean seems to make all the decisions. What's my role? I want to support X, but not Y. So how much actually does it cost to offer this program or course or major? This is my favorite one. Wait, what? We have to pay for that? The snowplow. How do I do discretionary salary increase recommendations? Do we even have a base budget? Some of you may not. And the last one there is, what is all this paperwork I have to do just to spend $25? That's New York State for you. So we're going to try to answer some of these questions with Budget 101. I call this the many colors of green. We'll go through income and expenses, sources and uses, where we get money from and how we spend it on a campus. We're going to start with revenue. Where does the money come from? And to start with that, I'm going to use a regular SUNY campus, a four-year SUNY campus as an example. If you're in a community college, the revenue part is going to come not only from the state, but also from community, from county sources. If you're in a private institution, your general operations money might be a little different. Some combination of tuition fees, residence halls, and so forth. And you're in a different state institution, different state, yours will look sort of like this, but a little different. So this is I'm using SUNY as an example. Okay, so the first one here is general operations. Where does the money come from? Two places. Tax support. This is what the legislature allocates to SUNY, and then SUNY allocates out to the campus. It's a recurring source of funds. And you think of this as like your kid's allowance. You get it every week, and you can either spend it all or you can save some of it and you'll still have it available. The savings is called a cash IFR. Income fund reimbursable for those. Sorry, was that my backdrop? Oh, okay. So those are and then tuition and fees is also recurring, but it's dependent on enrollment. So in the SUNY system, none of that is direct on a campus. The tuition level is set by SUNY. The tax support is set by the legislature. So it isn't a direct, I charge X to my student, I get Y dollars in. But the general operations of a campus are from the state tax support and then tuition and fees. So all of those are recurring funds, but that's not the only source of money that comes to a campus. Some of you have heard in the news recently about the indirect cost recovery plans that are to be reduced in the coming years. These are all typically restricted funds, so grants, contracts, research projects, things that money comes in, and the administrative support overhead that comes in with them. They're dedicated to a particular project. Residence halls, students pay for residence halls and dining services. The foundation, the philanthropic donations, auxiliary book service, bookstore, food service, and then specific state appropriations. My example in Albany is the funding that the university gets from the state to initially to fund this Mesonet weather reporting system across the state. Can't be used for other things, but it's used for that. Okay, so we've got two sources of money: the general operations, recurring money, tax and tuition, and then some restricted funds for specific purposes. Okay,
so I know you're in the middle of the slide, but I just want to make sure you see that there is a hand up. Letitia has her hand up.
Thank you, Letitia. I didn't see it.
Sorry, I didn't mean that.
All good. Okay. Thank you for alerting me. You guys are too small on my screen to be able to see hands. Okay. So here's an example about where in an overall campus budget, the revenue comes from. The dollars come in. You see that big blue chunk on the right. That's the state tax and tuition revenue that comes in. It's a little slice at the top of gifts and philanthropy. Auxiliary, for instance, the bookstore brings in that green slice. Research Foundation brings in a big slice. Earmarks, which are particular projects, brings in a little. That IFR, faculty buyout, other income and cash saved. That's the things when you haven't spent all your state tax and tuition, you can save it some. You get some faculty or staff buyout from research projects or other contracts. And then residence hall. So you get a feel for where the dollars come from. And you can also see there in this example the biggest is that big blue state tax and tuition. And that is, as we will see a little later, becomes critical in how you understand what money can be used for what.
I don't see popping up. Are you showing a slide?
You can't see a slide.
I can't see. Maybe others can. I don't see it.
I see a slide.
Oh, strange.
Sometimes at the top of the Zoom window, you have two options, whether you can see the slide or the person. And you might have it set on the meeting rather than the... Take a look at the top of your screen.
Okay, go ahead. I'll figure out. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt everyone.
Okay, well, glad to know that people are seeing it. Okay, so keeping in mind that the big chunks of state tax and tuition, so we imagine this campus, this fictitious campus, has this kind of revenue coming in. So we want to make a plan for how we might spend it. Of that, those set of dollars that I showed you, we can only make a plan for about 60% of it, of what I showed you in the prior slide. And we can make a plan for the state tax and tuition. There's a little state tax for graduate students. We can make a plan for residence halls. We can make a plan for the money that we've saved. And we can make a plan for the research overhead. What we can't make a plan for, because it is already committed, is the auxiliary money, the research foundation money, and the earmarks. Those are all dedicated dollars. So we can make a plan for those kinds of options. So where does it actually get spent? When I first learned this, I had to learn like it was a whole nother language. PSR is personal service regular. That means salaries and payroll, personal service. This is particularly important because in New York State, the state pays for any kind of fringe benefits. If you are in a private institution or maybe even in a community college, when you're hiring person X for $50,000, you're also paying another $25,000 for the benefits that go with the healthcare coverage, the retirement costs, the insurance, et cetera. So somebody who is appointed on a research grant or on private funds costs about 1.5 times more than if they're paid for by the state. This will come up again a little later. Second category of expenses, what the state calls is other than personal service, OTPS. That's supplies, equipment, telephones, travel. And then there's also these things on campus like libraries, scholarships, utilities, and then specific expenses related to the source of funds. So, repair on the residence halls, lab equipment for the research grants, and so forth. So this is sort of where the dollars go in terms of a overall budget. Taking a look at the campus budget for expenses, that big, huge blue 60% is the salaries and wages. This is where you begin to get a feel for why budget cuts feel so scary, because they will hit that blue spot. There's no way to cut without hitting that blue spot. The other ones here you can see are the other than personal service. That's the travel, telephones, equipment. The Research Foundation has a central assessment. RHDSRA is debt service when you've borrowed money or you've rented something. Library acquisitions, utilities, undergraduate scholarships, graduate student support. this will give you an example of where that, now, that doesn't tell you what you as a department get, but it tells you how the institution is operating as a whole, with, again, a focus on how big that big blue salaries and wages is. So if I then take a look at just what happens with the state funds, remember those state funds are really, that's the greenest of money because it covers the fringe benefits of anybody who's appointed. So in this example, this is of the state dollars that come in. So that's state tax support and tuition. 78% of it goes to salaries and wages. Will be a little different in your institution, but something like that. It'll be that big. And the other ones, the scholarships, graduate student support, utilities, other than personal service, library acquisitions, are all squeezed into this really small little area over here. So what you can't see really clearly here, this one, the rust maroon is graduate student support. The purple here is utilities. This little sliver of green is undergrad scholarships. This little sliver of blue is library acquisitions. And this orange is the other than personal service. Okay, so that's your larger budget picture for a campus. You can draw from that really two pieces of information. One is the importance of that state support for salaries and wages. When you're asking for an additional faculty line, that's the dollar, those are the dollars that you're asking for. And you can see how they are already allocated on a campus, making a huge dent in the state funds. And again, because the state funds cover fringe, that everybody puts salaries and benefits on that source of money. The other thing to take away from this as you think about the different pie charts that I've shown you is that there's a bunch of money that comes into a campus that is dedicated purpose. It is for a specific purpose. It is a contract. It is an earmark. It is a, given for this residence hall or this debt service. It's specifically guaranteed. One of the frequent issues that you'll hear on a campus, especially when there is our budget cuts in discussion, is, well, how can they build a new building and not hire a faculty member? How can they let faculty go when they're building this building? And the reason for that is because there are different sources of money. I haven't talked at all here about capital money or construction fund money. That's a completely separate source of funds. It is treated in the same way that you might treat the difference between having a mortgage and buying groceries. So groceries get expended, you eat your groceries, you feed your faculty, and buildings can be built and then repurposed or sold. So something that can be, that has a durable value. Not that faculty don't have a durable value, but once a dollar is spent on a building, it is subject to the same kind of notion as a mortgage because it can be repurposed or sold. Once money is spent on a faculty member, it's spent, it's gone. You can't go back and resell the faculty member, even though you might want to at sometimes.
So could I just ask you a question?
Sure.
Those salary and wages, I've always been told that we have a line item, if we're tenured, a line item on the state budget. So I'm trying to understand, because we know that that's like the biggest chunk of the college budget. So if we're a line item on the state budget, how did we get into a deficit situation? Because if that's the biggest chunk of the budget, and I'm at a very rudimentary level, if you could just sort of talk about that. Are the funds being used for other purposes? Yeah.
Help me understand a little bit more about your question. You're being told that a faculty line is a line item, or that your campus budget is a line item?
I've always understood that each of us who are tenured, we have a line on the state budget. Yeah. And so that is accounted for. But then I see that when my college reports about the deficit that we're in, then we see that, well, they'll say, a lot of the deficit you see is going because we have salaries and wages that we have to pay.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand that what I'm being told and how that matches with what you're saying.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a big guess here, knowing what I know about how the language goes.
Yeah.
When somebody says that you have a line item on a state budget, it doesn't mean the New York State budget. It means the SUNY budget or the campus state budget. So the New York State budget is way less detailed, and the New York State budget doesn't indicate, with some exceptions, what campuses get what. That allocation is made by SUNY. And then SUNY allocates to campuses, and the campuses create a budget for their state funds. And that's where I think the state line item on the state budget, but I think that's what that means.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's state, and then there's state, and then there's state. Actually, to illustrate the example, it keeps us going into the budget cycle. I mentioned that the SUNY budget is subject to the New York State Legislature, and this, you can see how this plays out in how the campus learns about its funds. In January, a campus can get a beginning view of where the state budget is going to be, what kind of money SUNY's going to get. In April, in theory, the state budget, the New York State budget, legislature budget, is finalized, maybe. And then in July, the fiscal year begins, and your students arrive in August or September. How this all gets put together means that budget requests for that last August, September have been made in the prior July, probably. This July, your campus is going to say, okay, what kind of money do we want to ask SUNY for? We need to have more money for X or Y. And so they will go out to deans and departments and say, what's your hiring hope for the year? Here you are in July. It's not going to come to you for months. But that request is because the campus then has to put a request into SUNY. SUNY then puts in a request to the state. The state puts together its budget in like November or so. And so it all backs up to, in order to have that beginning view of where the state budget will be, there has to have been planning at the campus level and at the SUNY level before it gets into the state budget. And here I'm using the word state as in New York State, not the state budget in the graphs I was talking about. So the budgeting for the following year really begins, a year prior, at least, sometimes more. I've often thought that it has put chairs in a really difficult position because they'll get a request from their dean of saying, so what lines do you need? And you're saying you're asking me something about faculty, and I have no faculty around to talk to about this, which tells you that you need to have had a faculty discussion before they depart for the summer, assuming they depart for the summer, if you know that there's going to be an opportunity for a hiring request for the following year. That illustrates one of the complexities of working in the SUNY system, is that SUNY per se works on a legislative timeline, whereas campuses work on an academic timeline. And so you're likely to get requests for information and budget requests at a time that doesn't fit with what you're accustomed to as an academic cycle. But that's the rough idea. So in addition to this budget cycle, there's lots of rules governing money. There are many colors of green, as I was fond of saying. Some of them are about state purchasing. So if you use state money, remember I said that state money is really popular for for personnel because it pays for fringe benefits, but it also has restrictions. So you can't buy lunch on state money. You can buy breakfast or dinner. You can't buy lunch. You can't buy plastic bottles, and a couple of other restrictions. And your finance person, whoever is your finance person in your school or college, knows all of this. There are contractual terms that you have. There's union contracts on every campus that specify minimums, maximums, workload requirements, and so forth. That also governs how money can be spent. Something that comes in a grant or some other sponsored fund or from a donor has specific terms about how money is going to get spent for that activity. A donor gives you money for scholarships, you can't spend it on faculty. Capital funds versus operating funds. This is what I mentioned about the difference between building a building and paying a faculty member. The money that can be allocated to support things that can be monetized, a building can be sold, versus the money that can be allocated to support consumable items like faculty or groceries, salaries. There's a complicated relationship I'm going to do with the next slide between the programs that you offer and the resources that you have. So hold on to that one. This slide in general is simply to alert you to the wisdom that your finance person will have, who will say, well, you can't do that with that color of money. You can do it with this color of money, but you can't do it with that color of money. So at this point you say, but wait, doesn't the department gets paid for its work? I mean, after all, we're the one teaching the classes for which students are paying tuition and the state is supporting. Don't we get what we have earned? And that's true, but here is where the snowplow comes in. There's also other stuff to pay for, like libraries, lab facilities, recreational facilities, plowing the snow, mowing the grass, student activities, resurfacing the parking lots. All of those dollars that can't come in, those state dollars that I showed you, also have to cover all of this stuff. So on average, about half of what your instruction brings in terms of state tax support and tuition, comes back to you in some ways to cover either salary or other direct instructional costs. About half. It depends on how expensive your particular program is. You might get a little more, you might get a little less, but about half. And almost no campus has a direct relationship between instructional activity and revenue, because things are, things are not as precise as that. But there are budget models that can work with that kind of model. Okay, let me pause there because my next slide is about what's a chair to do, where to start. Before I move on to that, let me ask if there's any questions or things that didn't make sense in what I just said about the big picture of the resources that you have on a campus. All good? Okay, all good, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, so what's a chair to do? Where do you start? I'm going to offer ways that I've seen work, and I'm going to offer some wisdom from experienced chairs. First one is to know what is to be accomplished. You heard this when we were talking about managing up a couple of weeks ago. Fitting your understanding of your department into the larger mission of the school and the university, into the plans that are in place, the bigger plans, is absolutely critical. Campus and dean priorities. And then to be thinking also about the priorities for your particular department and unit. It's often the chair's dilemma about how can I mostly be able to run my programs on time, get the trains running on time. But I also need to be thinking about, so what are my larger priorities? What's going to come up in 5 years that we need to be prepared for? How might I position my department to be able to withstand the budget cuts that I see coming? What are the priorities that I want to grow? What are the programs I want to grow, and what are the programs I want to decline? All of those questions are ones that are useful for you to be thinking about. You can think about them when you're not thinking about getting the course schedule done, and are important parts that guide your questions about budget. Okay, so know what is to be accomplished. Second one is to learn what resources there are. So you've got the big picture here. You can ask those questions on your campus of your finance persons. What resources do I have to work with? And what do things cost? This is you don't always get to know what that program costs to offer. But it's useful to know that if you can, to learn what's movable and what isn't. What can I move from one category to another? And then also what control you have over what's movable. Some departments will have lots of control over funding, and some will have none. Depends on your dean, your institutional setting. So to learn all of those, and this is a conversation, this learn what resources there are is a conversation for you to have with your school or college budget person. There's somebody who should become your best friend can you explain how the college works for budget? How does the department budget work? What do I have to work with? What do I need your permission to use? What do I need? So forth. So what is to be accomplished, the priorities, what resources there are, and understand what your faculty and staff understand about resources. And there's a corollary to this of transparency. Because the budget resources are there's never enough. There's always more great ideas than there is money to support them. And the budgeting, even the simple pie charts that I showed you, is something that your basic faculty and staff will never have seen. It's pretty complicated, even in the simplest form. And there's a tendency among people who manage budgets to just say, trust me. You can't do that, or you can do that. And one of the problems with that is that there becomes little understanding and suspicion that maybe there's money somewhere back there. There's surely money somewhere back there. See, they're getting money. There must be some money that's available. You're simply not giving me money. And having that kind of culture about misunderstanding of money is absolutely lethal to a department chair. So you want to be able to be sure that you know what your faculty and staff understand about resources. And I use my snowplow example as an example because you don't really notice until you're a department chair that there's things that need to get paid for on the campus. And when you bring that to the attention of other people, they, oh, yeah, right. Who is paying for the snowplow anyway? And being really clear about what it is that you have control over and what it is that you don't, even if it is tempting to hide a financial decision, nothing comes that's good from that. So transparency is a really good plan. Okay, so knowing what's to be accomplished, learning what resources there are, understanding your faculty and staff, and being transparent. So how do you get more money? There's never enough. And the three messages here are to connect to that larger campus or school mission. You heard about that in Managing Up, and I'm saying it again here. Campuses spend money on what's important to them, just like you do. You spend money on what's important to you. And so the more that you know what the campus mission and priorities are, the more you have a chance to connect what you're trying to do with that. Second piece of information is to get more money through external sponsored funds. That might be grants, philanthropy, even state earmarks. It's a great example I use from when I was a dean of education at the time. IBM was looking for ways to transition some of its workforce into a teaching force, to use some of its STEM educated employees who would like to change their careers into teachers. And so they worked with my School of Education to create a transition program into teaching for their employees. They funded their students in that. They provided a little bit of overhead for us to do that. It was a project that came about simply because of a conversation about something that an external entity wanted. In that case, it was IBM, but it could be something like the community center down the road, or the Industrial Development Association in your region, or the local auto shop that has something that they want to have accomplished, and that you can partner with them to do as a source of revenue. And then the last one is an example of ways to get money, is to ask if entrepreneurial activities are possible in your school. They aren't possible everywhere. And by entrepreneurial activities, I say, what I mean is things like not so much offering a course for, let's offer a new course in first aid for poodle trimmers, but rather to say, could we increase our revenue by offering a weekend workshop to poodle trimmers that doesn't come through tuition, but allows us to generate some revenue that we could then spend on travel or whatever. I'm using my poodle trimmer example simply as a silly way to get you to think about what it is that might be offerable from your expertise that might be a way to generate revenue. Sometimes some campuses permit this, some don't. There are some official SUNY ways to do it. They don't really want you to be competing with SUNY, but it does work in some places. And there are things that are called contract courses where they don't go through the regular tuition cycle. And then there are things like, doing a continuing education program, for instance, creates revenue. So it's good to ask if that's something that you want to consider, and if the kinds of expertise that you might offer or services that you might offer might be worthwhile. It's a great example that I know of a school of business that has used it. They'll work with a particular local business to provide a compensation, I'll call it, for a student project that the student, so in a course, a student wants to create a business plan for product X. And so the company Y will say, well, we're interested in product X, come and do that project here. So a student's sort of field-based project can result in a revenue income from the business that is benefiting from that. Again, it works there. It doesn't work in every institution, but it's worth considering as a way of getting more money. And this is where my phrase, if only we could, comes in. There is never enough money for the great ideas that are available. You and your faculty and your staff will have more cool ideas than you have money for. And often the answer to could we get money for X is if only we could. It's a wonderful idea. It's a great project. Let's not throw it away, but I have to put it on the shelf for now. Okay, so some advice from what I call budget tested chairs. People who have been around the block a number of times, and some of you may be in this category as well. You can add your 2 cents in. The first one is principled spending. Think about what it is that you're going to be spending money on, and create a plan and a set of principles to guide your decisions. You'll always have more requests than you have money to fulfill them. You might even ask your faculty and staff to participate with you in developing those principles so that they understand how those decisions are getting made as well. Having a clear rationale to support your decision, especially helpful if you have to say no. And when you are asked why you're supporting obnoxious Professor X in doing this activity and not delightful Professor Y, you can be honest about why it is that you're doing that. Again, transparency. If your campus uses an annual faculty activity report, you can connect that to support some database decision-making as a way to think about support for particular initiatives. So you can include that in your thinking. Some of this principled spending you can do without your dean or program coordinator's support. Some of it you have to do in concert with the next level up. Second piece of budget tested advice is maximize the resources that you have. Work with the chief financial officer, that's what CFO is, to use the right kind of money. Remember, you can't buy lunch with state money. And I've said before, your school's budget person should be your new best friend. You can also consider the idea of cost sharing. So I offer this as an example because you might be able to get part of what you want, not everything that you want, by saying to your dean or your next level up person, if you pay for 30% of this, I can cover 50%, and we can get donor Y to cover another 20%. So there are ways in which you might be able to get leverage by sharing costs rather than by asking for a whole compromise. Another way to think about that is to link it to enrollment. Enrollment is usually a really hot topic in any dean's agenda. And you could connect your request for budget to a promise of Y increase in enrollment numbers. Of course, then you have to be accountable for that. But again, to think about it, it's not just a gimme, but also if you do X, I'll do Y. Third category of advice is to spend carefully. Here, you can think about how your own awareness of your own personal budgeting and perhaps your partner's budgeting is very different. That there's some, well, let's just spend it, and some that are, every dollar is spent. Here, the suggestion is to, find a really systematic way to proceed. Take some risks, but not too many. Don't go into debt. Make sure that the basics are covered. Typically, a campus, a school or college will cover you if you go over. But that might be the last act that you have as department chair. That might be intentional, but it's useful to be a responsible steward for funding rather than simply somebody who spends. So make sure basics are covered, and to be conservative. Ask people to justify why do you need that. I know that some chairs have thought that overspending was normal and that people did it all the time, but it'll come back to bite you. So be careful. Okay, next category is, but don't forget to spend on what's important. So making sure that there's committed and stable support for new or junior faculty, conferences, memberships, things like that. Just because you have to be cautious doesn't mean that you can forget what's important. Again, that initial idea about what your priorities are. The last one here is transparency. Share information with your faculty and staff as much as you can. There's a lot of misunderstanding about how budgets work in departments. And the more that you can share information about that, the better. So if I were to give you a take-home task from this, I'd say, your first step is to stop in to talk to your financial person in your school or college, the one who manages the budget for the dean, or whoever the next level up is. Get as much information as you can about that. Begin thinking about what your priorities are and understand how the dollars are distributed so far and what you have control over. So I'm going to do your questions and ideas and concerns. I want to toss in one piece of advice that isn't on my slides. I think I think it's fair to predict that our financial situation in SUNY is going to be pretty challenged over the next maybe 3 years. And so the more that you can inform yourself about budgeting and begin thinking about how to do things less expensively, the better off you will be when that occurs. Just looking at how states are going to need to deal with decreasing funds coming federally, I can see the budget cuts flowing downhill to campuses. And so thinking about it now, being prepared for that as much as you can, at least in terms of the thinking, would be really good advice. Okay, so with that, let me open the floor to any questions or ideas, or what do I do in this situations that you might have? I see Ching, yes.
Hello, Susan. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I really learned a lot. So 2 questions. When you say transparency to the faculty members, are you including part-timers as well, or you're referring to mainly transparency with full-time faculty? The second question is, when you were saying you are seeing the budget going down to campuses in the recent next 3 years, we had some internal discussion, between me and some other colleagues. And from my understanding and from your previous presentation, the campus received mainly the budget from the state, right? But as long as I figured if the state economy is good and the state is willing to invest in higher ed, why are you saying the budget is going down, even though we're losing certain federal funding? Oh, you were referring to the research part, right?
No, I wish I were.
So yeah, would you mind to just elaborate?
Yeah. So here's what I see happening as potential. So the reallocation of the responsibility for healthcare is the biggest one. The funding that the federal government expects to save in Medicare, for instance, will result in fewer individuals in the state being covered, but they won't get any less sick. And so the state will need to cover the healthcare costs of its citizens. And I'm doing this on a citizen basis, but the same issue would occur if there were non-citizen residents as well. And the way that the Medicare budgeting happens means that there are hospitals involved in a bunch of other stuff, but nonetheless, the planned savings at the federal level don't reduce the need at the state level. So the state still has only X number of dollars that it generates from its tax base and from federal sources. So it has to move money around to meet the healthcare needs that aren't being met federally. And the money that gets moved around there gets moved from other sources. Money almost never goes away from K-12 education, although it does, but less so. In part, people say that that happens because every K-12 person has a legislator, and no higher ed institution has a legislature because it's not a place-based entity. Those of you who do have close relationships with your legislators, I encourage you to keep them very active. And so higher ed is actually a likely target for lower funding when funding gets moved away. That's just the Medicare part of it. The research overhead part is also critical for those of you who are in institutions that have a strong research mission. That overhead covers the cost of doing the research. So it funds labs, it funds, test tubes, it funds the things that are necessary to do the research, it funds the administration of the research. If those things are reduced, that means that there's a different campus burden for those things still have to happen. You still have to have the test tubes for the research project. If the campus has to pay for more test tubes, again, I'm doing this a bit tongue-in-cheek, then it has to pay for something else less. So money might move away from student services, or it might move away from Department X. So again, it's not a reduction in funding for education. It's a reduction for funding in other things for which then money has to be reallocated. There's one other place that I see it happening, and I think this will hit SUNY pretty strongly, and that is in funds for students. You just saw the reduction in student funding, federal student funding, both for professional and specialized schools, medical schools. I'm not sure if any of you have medical schools, but there's going to be reduced tuition support for students federally. There's also going to be reduced tuition support, loans and reduced loans for needy students, undergraduate. The SUNY system is pretty diverse in terms of its financial resources, and I expect that that is going to produce a greater need among students for campus-based support. Just for, tuition and fees, not to mention the other things that students need, like food and shelter and things like that. So I expect that there will be continued need for paying for tuition and other student-related needs, but fewer dollars that are coming in federally to support that. So I'm seeing down the pike that reallocation of funds, meaning that there will need to be campus adjustments made, moving dollars from, and state adjustments made, moving from priority X to priority Y. What percentage of SUNY CUNY budget originates from federal government? I don't know the answer to that. I know the answer to the, how much of a campus's budget is like a research foundation campus budget is based, is something around 17 to 20% of a campus budget is state supported overall, despite my pie charts, which always raises people's questions about, so why do they want so much control over it? The federal money comes into SUNY, and I assume CUNY also, mainly through earmarks and grants. So research funding or earmarks for, here grow a nanotech facility. Albany has gotten a lot of money for that. They don't, SUNY doesn't get federal money for almost any kind of instructional activities, academic activities. those dollars, when I gave you the pie chart about the state tuition and the state tax support, it all comes from taxpayer dollars, New York State taxpayer dollars. You also asked a question about transparency for full-time versus part-time. I think the full-time are the ones I was thinking about, but I don't see why you couldn't do part-time as well. Part-time is a little more complicated because you have to do a bit more to orient them to how budget decisions are made, about the sources and uses of money. But no reason for them to not know also. There's also why I keep emphasizing transparency is because when you aren't transparent, people make up things. And then that creates a problem that you could have avoided. Other questions? The end of your long day.
Thank you so much, Sue. This is great. And I really appreciate you being a part of the program again to support our new chairs. I know they're eagerly getting ready for the fall semester, so this is perfectly timed. And I'll be happy to put your slide deck into the Brightspace environment so everyone can review it when they're back to their budgets at their desk. And I just want to give everyone a last chance for any questions while we have Sue here. All right. Well, seeing none, I want to thank you and just sort of set the compass ahead for next week, which will be the last week of live learning. On Tuesday, you've got one more practice session for Crucial Conversations. So use the time between now and Tuesday to complete the online course. If you have been sticking with the milestones, you probably had about 3.5 hours left of online learning for that. And then we'll practice with another case scenario in our small groups on Tuesday. Thursday is our last half day. It won't be quite as long as our typical learning sessions. It's our capstone event. We'll give you some ongoing development opportunities. So beyond the academy, what else is out there for you to continue developing as a leader? And we will celebrate together. We'll reflect. We'll have a nice dialogue about all of the things that we can put together for your role. And then we will have a keynote speaker. So we're looking forward to that on Thursday afternoon. Same link, and we will see you in the Brightspace environment, and reach out through Brightspace to Lee if you have any questions about the online modules, or you can reach out to me. But thank you so much for your engagement, and I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your week. All right. This recording will be added to the playlist probably in the next 2 days.